Hey, very good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you may be. My name is Sean.
I'm Alex.
And this is Sven.
And you are listening to the final episode of Season 2 Coaster Kings Radio, the grand finale. Today we're going to be presenting our Crystal Crown Awards, which are an in-house award ceremony that we created for you, our listeners and our readers, as well as a look back at 2020, the most miserable year on Earth's past. Well, maybe not really, but for the coaster enthusiasts anyway.
Of the recent centuries, maybe.
And then we're going to look forward to what's hopefully going to be a better year, 2021.
2021 couldn't possibly be worse, could it? Right.
Well, they all said that about other years, and then 2020 happened. So.
There can be two new viruses.
Yeah, there's already one in India, apparently, that's been, killing everyone left and right. So...
No,
anyway,
but we're going to be positive.
It's fine.
So
Humanity had a good
it will be
run.
fine.
Asteroid hit us now. Okay. So, we'll just start with 2020. We'll dive right in. Sven, what was your absolute favorite or two favorite moments of 2020?
Yeah, so I have indeed two moments that really stood out for me. The first one was, even though Orlando got canceled, I still got to stay at a resort somewhere in Europe, and that was Park Asterix. And I really think that the new hotel, La Quai de l'Hôtesse, was a gem. And just after 3 months of being trapped in the home, and then being able to go to this new themed environment and the atmosphere and just sitting there in the bar, outside the bar, with a cocktail, living the resort theme park life. That's what I really missed after all that time. So it was just such a joy to have that moment.
I love that because it sounds so simple when you think pre-2020 you're having a cocktail at a hotel, but for real stuff like that in 2020 I really thoroughly enjoyed after lockdown.
Yeah, and of course it was a new hotel, so that gave it the extra touch, but maybe if it was another hotel I would have had kind of a similar experience just because it was after the confinement. Still depending on the hotel maybe, but is that a bad word? Sorry.
After the imprisonment in my house.
After the captivity.
Yeah, so I think that was definitely one. So I would say, was it the first? It wasn't the first theme park experience of my year, obviously, but it was the first after the first wave. And then I guess the last, or near to last, before the second wave, was Rookburg and Fly and Phantasialand. I've talked already a few times about it, but that was just the one thing I still wanted to do in 2020, and I was very glad I was able to do so. So after that, I really said, okay, now I'm good for a few months, because I know it will be bad, and so once spring is there, we'll have some new rides for next year and new theme park visits again. So
you had good timing too with Fly because it just opened and then you were able to swing a visit, and then shortly after travel restrictions got locked in again, and before you knew it they announced their closure again. So I'm glad you got to go on that. That was definitely the 2020 bucket list, I think, even for us, even though obviously we didn't get to go. And then for us, I think our year started off pretty promising. We were super hyped. 2020 was going to be 2019 2.0. And then it ended up being not at all 2019 2.0. But we started with our trip to Disneyland Paris, which is really cute.
Yeah, end of February.
Yeah, became pass holders because we were full of optimism about going there several times this year. And so we rode Hyperspace Mountain, which obviously is one of my favorite coasters. So that was really fun. And then we went to Texas to go ride Texas Stingray, which is a phenomenal new GCI wooden coaster that not enough people talk about.
I think it's the best GCI in the country.
Yeah, time was obviously really unlucky because it opened and 2 weeks later all the parks closed down. So I don't think it caught quite the media attention that it deserved, or just the enthusiast attention it deserved. But if you do get a chance to go out there, to our American listeners, definitely don't skip a ride on Texas Stingray if you're in the area. And then what else did we do? This summer we went...
when we got married and then went to Nashville to Soundwaves
Before
water
that,
park experience. That
oh
was
yeah, true.
That was.
But it was the same
my
trip we did
highlights.
Candemonium, which I guess
Yeah.
our listeners are probably more interested in.
I mean, I love a good indoor water park. I mean, that's Coaster Kings territory.
Slide Kings,
Yeah.
Water Slide Kings.
Getting toasted at a beautiful European style indoor water park resort and
That's
riding all the
definitely
water
swanky
slides.
for American standards. Swanky,
Okay.
is that a word that we
Yeah,
use?
yeah,
Yeah.
fancy. But yeah, that was also the same trip we rode Candemonium, so that was pretty good. I like Candemonium a lot. I think it's better than Mako. They look really similar, but I don't know if it's just like Floridian jadedness or what. But like all of our friends prefer Candemonium to Mako, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that Mako has that mid-course vibe-killing brake run that, like, after the mid-course, the ride's kind of over. Like, it doesn't do a whole lot. It has a clear a maintenance road, and then it has that swoopy finale over the water that really looks way cooler off-ride than it is on-ride.
Yeah,
and
it
it's
just
where
doesn't travel
Candemonium
fast
just
enough.
goes all the way out and then comes back, and it doesn't really stop till the final breaks.
It's like, yeah, Candemonium does have trims mid ride, but it's
Two of them,
still
yeah.
not as much of a buzzkill as the mid course on Mako. And Mako has a trim in the middle of the ride before the mid course brake run too. So it's like I really didn't feel like some people are like, oh, Candemonium's trim city and Mako is perfect, and I'm like, they're both pretty bad when it comes to trimming the ride. But Candemonium I found less bothersome.
Yeah, and I do think that it's a perfect addition to Hershey Park, given that Skyrush will completely beat you up. Like, I'm pretty sure most people can't handle Skyrush, and that's exactly why they, just a few years later, built another hypercoaster right next to it, like literally next to it. These rides touch support structures. Because it's just not a family-friendly ride, Skyrush. So you get beat up, and it was a reconfirmation riding it again. We rode it a lot, but God, I'm still bruised from riding it. It is intense. It is violent.
He made me ride it like 7 times.
But yeah, it is the best right there. So, and then what else we do? We rode Orion, which I guess was the last Giga.
Orion was important because we just needed to talk about it. Like, we wanted to be part of the Giga Coaster conversation, and now this was like a necessary piece of that puzzle.
Also, we didn't really have access to regional parks this year because Carowinds was closed. So, like, the closest Cedar
And we didn't go to
parks
Six Flags Over Georgia because Mindbender is being remodeled.
So close over Georgia. But yeah. So Orion was fun. I don't think it deserves all the hate it gets. I mean, it's not the best Giga Coaster, like not even in the top 5. But I still think it was a fun ride.
Yeah, I think I would take it, like, I guess if we ranked all the Giga Coasters.
We did.
Did we?
Yeah.
I remember
I
that.
forgot what we ranked it at, though. I feel like my
I remember
opinion has
that.
already changed.
But I feel like we've already... Orion was better on our first visit, because we went to Kings Island twice, 1 month apart. We went, like, at the beginning of July, and then again at the beginning of August.
late July and late August.
Late July, late
I
August.
think is what it was, yeah.
And after a month, like, we already noticed, like, a drop in the performance of... Oh, yeah. So we ranked the Giga Coasters after...
I would probably change it, but how we ranked it was, like, we ranked Leviathan 6, Millennium Force 5,
Orion 4,
Intimidator 3053, Fury 325 2, and then Steel Dragon 2000 as 1. But I think I would move Orion. I would move Leviathan up to number 4. And move Orion to 5 and Millennium to 6.
I don't know. There's a part of me that...
Because I think Leviathan... Now I think about it.
There's a part of me that I, like,
fun.
prefer Millennium Force over Orion because there's nostalgia there. And Orion has no nostalgia.
Okay, well...
Well,
the nostalgia
Leviathan,
kings.
like, the drop is really, really good. But then afterwards, you're kind of expecting something to happen, and it doesn't happen. Like,
That's exactly how Orion
has
feels.
it has a good layout. Well, it has good elements, but it's
It feels
I don't know.
unsubstantial. I would say that even though Millennium Force is not very intense, at least it's substantial in the sense that the ride duration and length is more satisfying than
And I will say
Leviathan
that
or
even
Orion.
though all of them have that elevated brake run, Leviathan feels the most out of place because you really travel so much. You're just like on the brake run and you're on that slope forever.
Yeah.
And Leviathan's is really like out just on the brakes forever. As where at least Orion's is a little shorter.
Plus, for me, it's also I still don't get why parks like do that. Like you
the
have
giant
a
elevated brake run.
No, you
wasn't
have
there
a
a
hyper. Why do you add a giga?
Oh, Well, most
Personally,
parks,
for me,
against
that's
its
weird.
marketability.
for
but
most
that's-
parks, it's like you add your Giga after you have your Hyper, and you've marketed it for 10 years.
I
Or in
guess it's
Carowinds-
just-
Canada's Wonderlands and Carowinds case, you market your Hypercoaster for 4 or 5 years and then build a Giga right next to it. But like Cedar Point started that trend with like they built a Hypercoaster in 1989, and then for the year 2000 they wanted another kind of different
Well, I think
approach
it's
to the
Finn's
concept.
point that like some are really close together because then you look at how quickly they built Leviathan like right
Leviathan
after
was
they
4
built-
years.
Yeah, it wasn't.
It was
Yeah, it was
2008 was
4 years. Yeah,
yeah.
And so 4 years later, and then like
And
Fury
Carowinds
was
was only
5
5.
years later. So it's like
I guess for
was
European,
Cedar
it's
Fair.
just weird because we're
Cedar
just
Fair
glad
was
if we
like,
get
we
a
ha-
Hyper or a Giga. So.
I think it was their way of
Yeah.
saying that like these parks should have already gotten Hypercoasters in the 90s, like Valley Fair and Dorney Park and Worlds of Fun
I
did.
guess the biggest redeeming quality for the Cedar Fair parks is that like the V-seating hypercoasters with the really long trains are such a different experience than like the short train Giga
Yeah.
coasters. So like they feel like completely different.
Like they
rides, even
definitely
though
feel like
they're
different
similar.
experiences. It's
But I
not
also think that's why the layouts are like so not airtime centric on
Yeah.
the Gigas because they already
understand.
have hypercoasters.
I understand from an enthusiast point of view, but not from a GP point of view. Like
Oh, the GP
I
ate
think,
it up.
Thing.
yeah,
The
but I
GP
think
love it.
most people will be like, okay, it's the same but bigger.
the only park where people say that is Kings Island. People
Okay.
never said that about Fury or Leviathan. They say it about Orion because Orion is the shortest Giga and Diamondback is the tallest of the three.
The gap is
Paramount.
much smaller. So
Like it's only a 50-foot difference in height
yeah.
between
It's
the two.
still, I will still find it weird.
Yeah, so
I can't help
do
it.
kind of
we
agree,
totally
though.
with Orion we agree with you. With Fury, and to a lesser extent with Leviathan, I feel like they have their own place.
I think the best set is still Fury and Intimidator because Intimidator is pretty much only airtime hills, and
Yeah.
like it's not super long compared to like Leviathan that's really long and that's all the weird things.
That really, yeah,
So they are
Fury
just
and
both really
Intimidator
fast and tall,
highlight
but quite different.
exactly why you can have a Hypercoaster and a Giga, or Millennium Force and Magnum. Those are obviously polar opposites.
But at
despite
least there you have different
manufacturers.
Yeah.
It's true.
And then there's King's Dominion that just skipped the Hypercoaster altogether because of Busch Gardens down the road with their 3 coasters with 200-foot.
Yeah, I don't want to jump into 2021 yet, but I do want to say that I find it awfully strange that like King's Dominion is getting a 4D free spin while like Busch Gardens is opening like a super tall hyper style.
It's only because King's Dominion is
Intamin launch
replacing
coaster.
a flat ride with their 4D free
yeah,
spin.
it's true. I hope they still get their wing.
It's
coaster,
basically
though.
checking a flat ride box, but it's a coaster. So I love that.
But so, all in all, so your theme park here wasn't that bad, actually.
It could have been worse. It was better than most.
Yeah,
It was just a bit domestic, traveling and doing
It was very
parks that were
domestic.
open.
It was a lot of Orlando Park appreciation.
well. That was the nice thing.
I think we really fell in love with Universal Orlando Resort this year.
And I don't mind giving our readers and listeners a bit of insight, but especially the Orlando market as like a theme park blog is really, really hard. It's just incredibly hard to stand out against the million other people blogging about, Universal and Disney stuff. But with COVID-19, a lot of those bloggers weren't quite as active. There was a lot of, international attention that was focused on these parks. Were more of like sharing other people's posts and stuff. So like this was really the first time we got to shine in this market with our Tron updates and Velocicoaster updates. And so actually I really enjoyed being very domestic and being like update focused because we hadn't really done that for Orlando. There really wasn't much of a need because like there's so many other really great content creators around here that we all know personally. So I never really felt like I wanted to compete for that little share. I would rather write unique stuff. And even though we didn't really have much of unique trips to go on this year, luckily we had the chance to kind of scope out some of the Orlando blogging thing, and that really worked out. So that was actually like a really nice benefit of this year.
For me, it was ranking which parks had good measures and which ones had less. It was like, okay, this is good here, but that is better there. So
Yeah.
this
Better
would
worse
be
than
the
Netherlands
perfect
failed.
thing. So if you take the mask policy there and the queuing there,
That's fair. I think we still do that. Like, even within Florida, just having like the SeaWorld parks taking such a different approach for better or for worse from like Universal and
that's a nice way
Disney.
of saying it.
It is funny seeing how much these parks think they compete, but then also do like completely opposite things. Like Universal not requiring reservations and hitting capacity every single weekend, and then Disney do take reservations.
Even the pass holders were starting to say, like, you guys need to set up a reservation system because it.
But I get Universal because I bet Disney like sells out reservations, then half the people don't show up, or they show
And
up
then their
late in the
parks
day.
are not.
Universal's like, well, if you want to come, you have to be there
Yeah.
before the parks reach capacity. So people are there early,
It
spend
kind
money
of
all day,
is
and they have a guaranteed filled gate.
a self-governing thing. But yeah, there's positives and negatives to both with systems.
But yeah, the biggest thing that we're doing this year, I think, for the website is the Crystal Crown Awards. It is a first time for us that we do like an award sort of thing. And though a lot of people do like crowd-based polling and opinion pieces, like the awesome Vote Coasters from CoasterBot that we had a podcast with, go check it out. This is actually something that's more internal. We have a team of about 12 to 15 people that do Coaster Kings with us. And even though not everyone's had the same experiences, you know, talking to each other, which we do all day long in our group chats, really helps with kind of creating a bit of like, you know, conversation pieces that never have been translated into awards before. And so what we wanted to do is kind of consider ourselves as like an academy.
Yeah,
right? And like
we are the
among
academy,
ourselves,
the Coaster Kings Academy.
the Crystal Crown Academy.
Yeah.
And so we wanted to take some of the discussion points we've had that I've never really seen the light of day when it comes to awards.
Rankings and awards and
highlight
these
those.
things.
So we're not just another like ranking the coasters thing because, you know, first of all, we do it all the time. Second of all, a lot of other
everyone
websites
knows
do that.
what we think is the best wood coaster, the best
You
steel
know,
coaster,
everyone knows
the
we
best
don't like
park.
steel benches as much as everyone
Like
else.
those-
Like we didn't want to do that again. So we have 16 unique categories. Some are a little more usual than others.
Some
Yeah.
of these we've touched on in articles. Some of these we've not.
And some
of
are
these,
just like really good suggestions by team members that we had actual conversations about.
yeah,
Yeah,
So-
plus we have a pretty diverse group. Like
Very.
some people are very fond of a certain type of coasters, while others are more leaning towards the general. So it's good that we have a mixture of all kinds of opinions that led to these decisions.
yeah.
Yeah, it was really fun, kind of like discussing all of the categories with each other and
some
like
stuff,
seeing the
like,
new points of views from other
Thinking
people.
about a park with like a great characteristic or a great quality that deserves to be highlighted and like working our way back from it and being like, you know, this park has the best.
Well, yeah, it
blah,
kind of
blah,
comes
blah,
down to like
and being
really
like that's
having
something that nobody's
like a
talked
great
about
experience,
before.
and then being like, well, what category? Like, there's not
Yeah.
really a category for it, and then kind of being like, well, what if we look at more rides or experiences like that?
Yeah,
and
is
create
this-
a category
yeah,
for
yeah.
it, and then pick our favorite.
Yeah.
So, without further ado, we're gonna get started. We're gonna just run through the 16, almost like an award show, except we're not really good at award presenting. So we're gonna just do it the best of our abilities.
No, we may talk about some other nominees, but we're really focusing on
on the winners,
the answers that were obvious to us.
and we'll ease
So-
into it. Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sven.
No, I was just going to announce, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Crystal Crown Awards. Clapping.
This is so wonderful.
Also,
And
And
here
very-
are your hosts for tonight, Sean and Alex and Sven.
Boop, boop, and Sven.
and Sven, and this is Sven.
And this is Sven.
It's the highlight of my day when we listen to podcasts back and your announcement.
I know. Sven brings the calmness that we all need.
Sven is the Zen factor.
Sven with a Z.
Zen populaire.
Okay.
Sometimes I just
So-
crawl into the conversation and like, this
Yeah.
is my opinion.
Oh yeah, I
And
love
Sven-
that. Sometimes we like overcrowd Sven.
Sven keeps us from flying too close to the sun.
Yeah, this podcast would be dead by now, but we're just Sven. So shout out.
This podcast really wouldn't exist without Sven.
True.
It's
Aw.
nice having a professional recording artist.
And neither.
There you go
with some
again.
of-
No.
Oh, sorry. I was gonna make this a really smooth transition and talk about how like some of the most loved theme park attractions nowadays wouldn't exist without like leading other attractions like Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey, which
Beautiful.
was nominated and won the Best Queue Award
Best
from
queue.
Crystal Crown
Yes.
Awards show. God, this is messy.
Best queue experience.
Best queue
overall
experience. And this is funny because we had an argument about this earlier this year. There's a lot of cool queues out there, and obviously living in Orlando, it's like queue city over here. So we were like, well, what is really the best queue? And
Standards
we
are
settled
high.
on Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey because its age is important. Like, it opened in 2010, and back then, queues really weren't quite as important to the experience besides looking nice. But the Harry Potter and the Forbidden Journey tells a story that continues on the ride itself. And in order to experience that ride, you have to have experienced the queue. Everyone wants to walk through Hogwarts.
It's
obviously
the only
everyone's
queue I
dream.
can think of where like it qualifies as its own attraction, and people will walk through the queue on principle, even if they don't want to ride. And
I mean,
go
if
through
you
the
think
exit.
about it, even Universal Studios Hollywood did that when they opened. They had two options: you could either ride or do the castle
Yeah.
tour, and you would literally get a pass and walk through the castle instead of riding.
I would consider it like required reading for a trip to Universal. Even if you don't ride rides, if you don't like rides, you have to walk through Hogwarts Castle because that's my favorite part of the whole experience. Like, I like the ride, but I like the queue even more.
Yeah,
I
and
like
so-
it as a whole, but I think Disney also had already some cues that, of course, it was a lot about theming, but I think some of them also were highlighting a build-up to the story. But Universal, they just kicked the ball out of the park with adding that
I would
whole
agree,
experience.
Forbidden Journey was like so over the top compared to like what was previously considered like a themed queue experience that like even Rise of the Resistance and the whole like queue and then the transport thing and then you're transported somewhere else and then you re-enter the
again,
queue into
yeah.
another thing. Like, I still prefer Forbidden Journey.
And we also talked a lot recently about Flight of Passage.
Flight of Passage is
Pandora,
my
the
other
World of
favorite
Avatar.
queue.
It's a really beautiful queue, and though it tells a bit of a story, of course, like Sven
not
mentioned,
quite as
earlier
integral.
queues, it doesn't quite like specify the story. And
You still get to the
there's,
end and you have all the pre-shows, and the
Exactly.
pre-shows are like too much and it ruins the whole experience.
and there's just an edge into
They
like
have to
telling
explain it so much.
the story on Forbidden Journey that really goes into detail because of all the intricate pre-show, queue stories versus just having a regular
A pre-show
queue,
where they have to
where then
spoon
you end
feed
up in
you
a
and hold your
pre-show.
hand and just be like, explain it to you from start to finish. There's always so much that they could finesse in the queue itself that explains why you're there and what the ride is, whereas Forbidden Journey makes it seem effortless.
And though the ride itself is obviously phenomenal, I think there's a reason that we're seeing this cloned again for the fourth time this year or next year in Beijing. It's just because it is just simply such a complete package. Like, opening that, even if the source material isn't widely spread in the region you're opening the ride, it is a guaranteed. It is
It's
just one of those things where,
automatically-
like, the whole experience combined, the dark ride's great, the queue is great, but
Like, they don't
together
have to change.
they're
They
even
don't have
better.
to change anything about the queue for it to be perfect and ready
And
to dominate.
And like
the
the ride
market.
itself, even though it's 10 years old, it's still very relevant and still modern.
Extremely,
And
yeah.
We
So,
ride it a lot, and I
that's
always
interesting.
mention that even though Disney really pushes the words like groundbreaking or like most ambitious ride ever for Star Wars Rise of Resistance, I still think that, like, compared to the age we live in, Turtles Dark Rides have been around for 10 years.
Yeah.
For 20 years.
20 years.
But when Forbidden Journey opened at Universal Studios or Universal Orlando Resort in 2010, it was the first of its kind.
That was still a
and
more
it still
seismic
feels so
impact.
revolutionary, being able to move through all those scenes in the air. I don't know. I'm really partial.
Like, you could
to
argue
ride.
that Rise is better than Forbidden Journey, but you can't argue that Rise was more impactful in 2020 or 2019 than Journey was in 2010.
Yep, that's exactly what the C is.
Because there's a 10-year difference between the technology in these rides, and yet Forbidden Journey is, I would say, equally as impressive, if not more so. Just because the arms are the ride system is so mind blowing in a way.
And we don't have a best dark ride category, but it would definitely nominate if
Yeah.
it were. So let's move on to the next category.
Okay,
Alex, what's the next
most
award?
revolutionary coaster? They're talking through like our idea of revolutionary, impactful. I think the important quality for this is something, not necessarily something that feels new and revolutionary right now in 2020, but something that's older, that has aged incredibly well and is still so notable and talked about as if it was brand new or like still emerging technology. And that ride for us is X2 at Six Flags Magic Mountain. Alan Schilke's true legacy, his real mad scientist moment for me was developing the only true 4D roller coaster system, which is the SNS/Aerodynamics 4D coaster with the two rail ratchet and pin in vehicle system for program spinning on a 3-dimensional plane.
And this all kind of came down to looking back at attractions that are, I mean, literally almost 20 years old. X2. I mean, 20 years ago, X2 was under heavy construction.
Yeah.
And still feeling like it is.
It's still the bread and butter.
Yeah, it's like Magic Mountain's
experience.
like extreme, outstanding coaster.
It's
and
still,
even for the country,
it's still the
pops into my
country's
head.
most spectacular roller coaster, I think. Like
And it's
on
20
a
years
level
later.
of it still brings people
To tears.
to like
There's two coasters where I was the first time riding terrified. The first one was Stuntfall at Park Warner Madrid. Like I did not expect a giant inverted boomerang to freak me out that much.
to feel like
And then
that,
the second one was X2, where with you guys, I was like, I played Roller Coaster Tycoon and I saw that ride, and you were
Really?
like, imagine the day that's going to happen and that I'm going to be on there, and it will be so. I don't know. And then
I remember my first ride. I was just I couldn't believe. I wasn't even that scared because I was really excited. But then, like when I got off the the little pre-drop, I was terrified.
Yeah.
I just started flipping and I saw below me and I felt how free I was.
Yeah.
I was like,
you
about
never
to lose
forget
it.
your first ride on X2
It feels so out
or
of control.
Ejanica or Dynaconda. There's just nothing like it. There's nothing. I mean, having X2, you could, I mean, where we used to live, you could see it from our parking garage. That's how close we were to Magic Mountain. And no matter how many times we rode X2, it still felt eventful, like riding it. You never get used to like that first drop and being like pile driven face first into the ground off of a 200-foot lift. Like there's just nothing that feels like, I feel like that was the pinnacle of industry envelope pushing. And we've seen a lot less of like peripherals and gimmicks as far as ride vehicles in the industry now.
I think I like to believe that X2 paved the way for rides we not necessarily connect to it.
Yeah.
I think X2 paved the way for the Zack Spin
Yeah,
and for
the wing coasters,
for the wing
the
coaster,
free spins and
the
stuff.
40 free spin. It's like these were all really great ideas, except for they had to be simplified. To
the
be more
motivation,
consistent, I
the
guess.
success of the 40 free spin was born out of a motivation to build like a watered down X2 for every Six Flags park.
Not just watered down, also just the pricing.
Yeah, watered down.
There's a reason only 3 exist.
Budgetary.
They're really expensive to build, but also incredibly expensive to maintain. These
Because
rides
if you think
hardware
about
are
it, to build Dynaconda, it costs as much, if not more, than like Fury 325. Like these rides cost in excess of $30 million, and
So Cedar Fair, next time you slap in your next Hyper / Giga, how about you slap in a 4D coaster?
Yeah, how about because an SNS 4D if another SNS 4D coaster got built anywhere, it would be news. It would be so incredibly newsworthy.
yeah.
But there's also a problem with this ride is that it's too niche. So like there's a reason that Magic Mountain, which I would say has the biggest throw lineup in the world, and
Fuji-Q
Highland
has the biggest throw lineup in Japan.
And then the Chinese love extreme rides because they live much more like a more recent boom of throw rides. So obviously Dynaconda.
I mean,
was a good
Dynaconda
move
is
for a
almost
big
10 years
park,
old, and I attribute Dynaconda to China's fascination with the B&M wing coaster.
which they're everywhere.
Yeah, they're everywhere. So I feel like the impact of this style of riding, which is a concept that is as old as me, because if I'm not mistaken, Alan Schilke was like started that project like in the early 90s, and it just took years and years and years of tweaking and concepts and stuff for it to finally see the light of day. I just don't think anything even comes close to that in terms of dedication and significance, and then the impact and the satisfaction of like riding one of these 4D coasters, one of these true like programmed 4D spinners. So for me, it was obvious.
And I think everyone kind of agrees to that. Like Sven said, of only 2 coasters he's ridden in the world, where like, and he's traveled quite a bit too. X2 was one of the only ones that really freaked him out, and it kind of goes to say like these rides really are that impactful. Even 20 years after they've built, nothing crazier has been done since, and that's I think why X2 wins the most revolutionary coaster award.
Yeah, it's the only coaster breed where every time all 3 First time I rode it, I came back with like tears like streaming in my face.
It's funny because we rode them in the order they were built, and they just kept getting crazier.
And each time they got more. Each time we thought we knew what we were expecting.
Yeah, it's completely
we thought we were. I thought I was mentally prepared for Ijanika. I was not. And then we rode Danaconda thinking we were prepared based on our rides on Ijanika, and we were not. And all 3 times I came in like shaking.
Were you sitting comfortably though?
I would say the trains are comfortable.
Oh yeah,
but are
There
they
are
the most comfortable?
trains that are more comfortable. Yeah, the next category is the most comfortable rolling stock.
We were in that together. I like that.
Alex is dying.
I'm just like
Like for me, I think there are 2 things that are important. First of all, lap bars have been a big plus in the recent years because it gives you, especially for airtime, a lot more of the sensation, I think. And next to that, I think freedom is also very important. That you don't have to sit front seat to still have a good coaster experience in these type of trains, and to have a bit of a freedom that you're not pushed into in between other riders like the B&M trains can have. Mm-hmm. So we picked Intamin new generation sit down coasters. So like Taron, like Steel. Is it Steel Dolphin?
Yeah, Steel Dolphin.
Yeah,
Taiga,
Ocean Park,
Doaling Dragons, and
Velocicoaster. Velocicoaster.
Yeah. And next year also the Wallaby Mega.
Wallaby Mega. It's
Yeah.
all about the over-the-shoulder lap bar.
Yeah, we're getting to the
Phenomenon.
age where over-the-shoulder trains should no longer be a thing unless it's a flying coaster or like rides like a 40 free spin where you have to be held in place. But if your whole point of the ride is like quick transitions and airtime, then you need to have something that's comfortable, that gives you enough leg room so even your legs get some motion. And biggest thing is like the lap bar part. And the great thing about these new trains is that they're over-the-shoulder lap bars, meaning that the restraint doesn't have to come between your legs, giving you that freedom, like Sven mentioned, for your legs and for your whole body to kind of feel free, while also giving that lap bar experience. And the most comfortable of the ones we've ridden, the most, I would say, consistent are definitely the Intamin ones. Mm-hmm. I was toying with the idea of like maybe the Mac ones, but I feel like the Mac ones sometimes bounce a little bit because of the single piece that holds the seats up. As where the Intamin ones, I feel like when I ride it, I ride a lot more sturdy rolling stock. And I've never had a bad experience on any of those trains ever.
On the Neo Intamin ones,
Because they had a bit of a way before they got to those kind of trains, you know, like
Skyrush was their first attempt at that sort of thing, and they saw a lot of improvements since Skyrush.
Well, and they had Maverick and stuff with the vests, and then they moved to Skyrush, which was dubbed Thigh Crush.
They were the original over-the-shoulder lap bars from Intamin, and they put a lot of punishment on the upper legs. And then with some of the newer Intamin Blitz coasters, like the big one in Turkey, I think I remember seeing pictures of the trains for that one, and they're like, oh, it's like Skyrush trains, but they're like improved. They're like, they fixed the issue with the lap bars, and now like they keep you secure, but they don't try to cut your legs off.
And it's funny, they actually still sell the weird like wing seats like we know on Skyrush and Flying Aces, but they sell them with the newer trains now.
Yeah.
So
Flying Aces has the newer ones.
There
Isn't there Soaring with Dragon also that has those kinds of...
Yep, Soaring with Dragon has the same trains, like Taron, really, the two seaters,
Taiga.
Yeah. So, and then we already have hypercoasters with them. So like the Nanchang Sunak Land, the green and orange hypercoaster has them, and of course the hypercoaster. Well, Belgium's gonna get them. So these are very diverse trains. I feel like whether you want a crazy inverting launch coaster or an airtime machine, these trains
it's like Hyperion,
do
right?
the job.
Aren't those kind of like Skyrush's trains or like Flying Aces?
Yeah, it might be.
With over-the-shoulder lap bars, are those different?
It's not
some
this.
way?
Well, it's a 4-seater, so maybe.
I imagine those trains being pretty much the same as Flying Aces, but we haven't ridden either of those. But in any case,
but yeah, so that is definitely what.
It's like Velocicoaster we already know is going to be so lit because there's nothing more devastating than like a great coaster concept that's ruined by uncomfortable trains, whether you know they're going to be uncomfortable based on other rides or you sit in them the first time and you're like, oh, like this is not going to be
And that's
fun.
a recent thing in the industry, because it used to be like the focus was always on the layout and the track,
Yeah.
and like getting the craziest ride layouts. And now we can kind of do it all and we push the limits, but like every manufacturer push the limit at some point. I think now the point is becoming like, well, what will give the client the most reliable and comfortable rolling stock? So that's Vesta trains for B&Ms, that is over-the-shoulder lap bars for Intamin and Mac, and it's all the new trains we're seeing on Vekoma. So I really like the switch where it was like any rolling stock will do was kind of like the previous mentality, and like we just want to build the craziest ride. And now it's like, well, no, your rolling stock sells your ride.
Yeah.
And I judge like that because I don't like the new Premier trains very much.
There's nothing like sitting on Steel
Even though their
Vengeance the
layouts are
first
cool.
time. Sitting down for our first ride on Steel Vengeance, and we pulled the lap bars down, and we're like, oh, I'm already not having a good time. Like, I already feel like I'm too tall for this. Like, these are not comfortable compared to the Six Flags.
Yeah, and as a tall person, I like to pride
Iron
myself on having
Horses.
good knowledge of what are good trains and not, because more than not, I'm in pain on
Yeah.
roller coasters, which I still like riding them. But there's just, legroom really makes a difference, and these intimate trains have that comfort and legroom. And even though I'm really tall and I'm kind of chunky, I definitely have never really felt uncomfortable.
I just
on these
appreciate when
trains.
legroom isn't even a factor.
I know, yeah, when it's
like
not a
why
concern.
should there's way too many rides where like whether or not the leg room is good is like a make or break detail, when there's also lots of roller coasters out there that like you don't even have to think about it.
Like all these intimate trains.
Yeah, it's not even a matter of like, because the vehicles don't have like a front to them really.
And then, like, speaking of rides where, like, legroom is not necessarily guaranteed, but the trains are still really cool, we're going to move to our next category, which is the Best Looking Rolling Stock
Best
Award.
looking rolling
which is
stock.
awarded to Star Wars Hyperspace Mountain at the Disneyland Paris Resort. Which,
So I think, I think the three previous ones, a lot of people will agree, but maybe here,
I'm ready.
You are a bit biased.
Well, we're not necessarily biased, because I would have maybe said Tron. But Tron, though really clean, doesn't have a lot of detail. And I was thinking, coaster trains nowadays often look really cool, and like color schemes are getting perfected.
Standards are high.
Standards are high.
Stuff announced for 2020 was like a game changer as far as number of parks that really seemed to care about how the trains looked.
But then I thought, well, what if we go and look at the train that presents the past, present, and future of like a ride, tells a story, but also just it just works and it's very detailed. And those categories all kind of belong to Star Wars Hyperspace Mountain, where like it definitely touches the original theme. It has a Jules Verne kind of feel to it, golden touches, very modern blue aesthetic, which works with the current
blue and
Hyperspace
gold.
Mountain overlay. And then it has all these little details on the trains.
I can't
on
believe
the side.
the seat backs on those. The rubber
the
seat
seat back
backs
are like are a faux.
upholstery,
leather.
like bulleted upholstery.
I feel like I'm riding some
application,
like
but it's
super
just
fancy,
molded rubber.
like classic.
It's
Jules Verne.
elegant. Like I don't
Elegant
think
train.
of roller coaster rolling stock as being ornate, elegant, like art, and this,
And though they're not the most modern looking, though there are definitely modern trains,
Yeah.
they definitely kind of tell a story. And I feel like unless you're looking at something directly from a movie like Tron, which it's really cool and tells a story and looks exactly what you want.
that's
it to look
another
like.
good point.
This one tells a story just by looking at the train. I can tell that it's like steampunky. I can tell that it's space. I can tell that like it works with hyperspace. When I see the name and I see the train, I put those two
Tron
together.
was all about emulating something that already existed, whereas the third round of rolling stock for Space Mountain in Paris was like doing something totally from scratch and making it
I
look
think
amazing.
the original trains were definitely already one of the coolest looking coast trains out there, and I think they continue that dedication to the theming on the train, which is really rare. Like that amount of detail and that amount of like past, present, future kind of like train respect is really rare, and that's why we gave it to Hyperspace Mountain in Paris. They are the
and
nicest looking rolling stock.
The original trains were also the first ones to have real onboard audio.
Yeah.
So they already were a bit revolutionary. And then you mentioned that they fit well with the hyperspace theme. I agree, but I do feel that the trains themselves are really connected to Space Mountain in Paris.
Yeah.
Because of the Columbiad. And so a lot of people were like, okay, this is it. We're finally getting back our From the Earth to the Moon experience with these trains. And it still hasn't happened, but either it will at some point.
It's foreshadowing Very
or-
strong.
Yeah.
Or it's just dedication to like the past of the ride, which this is one of the few rides that's such a cult following when it comes to the previous
I love
stories
that. Like
of
you
it.
could look at
Yeah.
those ride vehicles, and there's only one ride that would come to mind. Like,
Well,
there
doesn't the ride just tell a story? I look at the picture that Sven took, and I included in our article on the website as well regarding the awards, and I just like it just screams only that ride and Superstructure to me.
Yeah.
You could not put those trains on any other ride and make it work, and I think that's important. You know,
like if there were
especially because it's
pictures
all
of
original.
coaster trains from our factory, I'd be like, those are for Space Mountain Paris. Like that's the only possibility. You couldn't put those on any other ride and make it.
And I
make
feel
sense.
like a lot of rides, vehicles nowadays look really cool and they're very minimalist and they have really nice patterns and colors, but they're mostly just flat. That's where like the details on these trains, they are 3D. They
Even
are
Tron, it's like is a feat of like light choreography and timing and stuff, but the vehicles themselves are pretty
very
straightforward.
basic, yeah. And so that's why our best looking rolling stock for 2020 went to Star Wars Hyperspace Mountain. We'll see if any of the new 2021 coasters do it better. But as of right now, I really think that
there's some
that
contenders,
deserves
but
to be in Paris.
yeah, that Jules Verne aesthetic I think is tough to top as far as train rolling stock go.
What else is tough?
I love your transitions, babe. They're
It was
perfect.
really cool with the 16 transitions in a row. But,
16 smooth. They're not all going to be smooth. We've got some arrow transitions in this list. Just saying, they're not all going to be
we
smooth.
got some headbangers,
Yeah.
that's for sure.
Anyway, so the color scheme on the Hyperspace Mountain trains are pretty lit. So we're moving from a lit color scheme, lit color palette on a roller coaster rolling
Party
stock
mode.
to a really lit color scheme on a roller coaster track. And I think color schemes and roller coasters, there's a lot that comes down to just taste. Like whatever your favorite color is and your second favorite color and your third favorite, if you find those on a roller coaster somewhere, you're going to think like, wow, these are great colors. This is a great
But
color
also it
palette.
comes down to like what is unique and what works.
Something that really stands out, and you find a dramatic variety, a dramatic pairing or triage of colors to make a really memorable color scheme. I mean, there's some companies. I mean, like Cedar Fair is remembered for their fascination with red and yellow as a color scheme, because with the blue sky that you expect to have on most days at a theme park, you get the primary colors. Like, there's some science behind it as far as like what parks choose for their colors. Sometimes you're telling a part of the story. Your color scheme has to reflect the theme. It has to reflect the area of your park. And so it's in those ways.
And sometimes you're thinking, what is the cheapest paint? Because I need to repaint it all the time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like that's the reason Magic Mountain has so many blue rides.
There's so
They
many.
have a lot of blue paint.
Yeah, there's a lot that goes into it, more than just like, oh, this would be just a really fun color scheme. But every once in a while,
And it also kind of comes down, and this is something that I want to bring up, is durability.
Durability.
You can have a color
Aging,
scheme like
yeah.
Tatsu, which is definitely an amazing color scheme when it opened. It was revolutionary. The amount of like red, orange, and yellow had never been done before. It was like a masterpiece. But it's hard to paint, and it fades so quick in the California sun that now it looks like trash. So like,
I
what
think a
looks
lot
good,
of
even when it
orange
fades?
coasters have that issue,
Struggle.
actually.
Oh,
Because
yeah, I would
Expedition
agree.
GeForce is also...
there's some coasters with really ambitious paint jobs, like Fire Whip at Bayo Coretta World, or the Dragon at Ocean Park,
Hong
which
Kong.
were major contenders for this category, but it's almost too much. Like, the amount of like doing flames and like 7 colors in your color scheme is almost over the top, and if you're not updating it like every 5 years, it gets really bad really quick. So
Our nominee,
ultimately,
our winner,
our winner was actually, I think, a surprise for a lot of people, but one that has stuck out in my mind as my favorite color. Like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, that's my favorite color scheme, and I've thought about it. Every time we've talked about color schemes for coasters, I think about this ride. Ever since I wrote it in April of 2017, it's Bosque Magico's Zombie Ride. Bosque Magico in Monterrey, Mexico. The color scheme for this ride is somewhere between acid green and neon yellow,
which fades really well. 'cause
depending
it'll
on who
always
you
stay
ask. I mean,
in a
I'm
similar color
colorblind.
scheme.
As a person who can't really tell
Yeah,
green and yellow
this
apart,
really helps you defending why it's the best color scheme.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm colorblind. This is the best color scheme.
because it looks good whether your eyes work properly or not.
Oh, okay, nice segment.
And then
Yeah.
the supports are somewhere between dark purple and like a midnight blue. Like, I don't even know.
Which again helps when
Yeah,
it
and,
fades.
like-
It still looks really good.
Yeah, I mean, whether it looks like neon yellow and midnight blue or acid green and like violent violet purple, either way, the color scheme on this ride is so dramatic and so beautiful, and the finish on it is so pristine. I mean, if you've seen some of these Skyrocket 2 models built at like the SeaWorld parks and stuff, the finish on them, it's like candy. Like the paint is so glossy and so beautiful. The track style really lends itself to being painted these dramatic colors. So it became like photographing this ride became an instant obsession, because also with a blue sky background on a sunny day, there was nothing that you could add to the color palette of this ride, whether it's like mountains in the background with like blue smoke in the distance, or green grass and
I think if
rich
you put
foliage, all of it.
Yeah, if you put 9 coasters on one picture, that will be the one that stands out.
Oh, that's a really good way of putting that.
Yeah.
And you know what? I do want to also give a bit of a shout out to the Medusa coasters here, because they were the first to test that color scheme. And whenever you look at a picture of like Discovery Kingdom from a distance, Medusa, even though it's faded now, still jumps out. And they can still go to the next level with more polish, a little bit darker tones on Zombie Ride.
It is such a dramatic, audacious choice, especially for a park like Bosque Magico. They don't have anything tall. This was their first really like tall ride. And Monterrey, Mexico, I mean, this is it. This is their amusement park, and that ride is like their pride and joy. It's got the highest capacity of any of the Skyrocket 2 coasters.
It's the only one with a sliding station.
And you go through twice. And the queue for it is
a little intense.
Fully functioning. Oh yeah, I only rode it I only rode it like twice because I could only go through the queue.
Times? Sorry. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I only waited in line for it twice because the queue was too scary.
Oh yeah.
Because it's a fully functioning haunt with audio animatronics and live scare actors. So it was too much for me. But
sounds COVID friendly.
they need like a chicken queue, like a way for you to queue up for the ride that doesn't involve going through an active scare zone, because it was. But man, the people of Monterey have a good thing going with that ride.
It would have been a good transition to Best Queue nomination.
Oh, yeah. Sorry.
But
okay. instead, it's something else.
Yeah, it's going to be the roughest transition, but it's fun.
Well, hey, this ride has a soundtrack in the queue.
Okay.
There's
detail.
I was waiting for my transition.
We're going from a queue soundtrack that's zombie themed.
Everyone knows this, I'm sure of it.
Everyone that's written knows. If you know, you know.
Yeah, if you know it, you know. It's the best coaster soundtrack goes to the Vliegende Hollander. And I think, obviously, there are a few rides that would fit in this category. But, I mean, it's. I think for me, it's one of those songs like It's a Small World. Once you hear it, it's stuck in your head for the rest of the day. And it's not only that, because you have the main tune, but then when you go through the queue, it's also every area that has its own soundtrack. If you're in the bar area, you have they also added the noise of actually being in a bar, and then you see the station, you have that music. You go into the ride, you also have like the port music when you leave, and you have like the sea scene, so that's like the second scene where you're going through pitch darkness. So the only thing lifting and theming the ride at that point is the music. So and then right before you see the Flying Dutchman, the build up, like it's just it was actually René Merkelberg's first big project for the Efteling, and since then he has obviously done a few more. So yeah, I think Vliegende Hollander definitely deserves that.
Yeah, it's one of those rides that has a really strong build-up when it comes to queue, and station is gorgeous, and the ride itself has a really nice dark ride section as well as a pretty decent coaster section. But it all just really gets tied together by that individual score. That soundtrack is just like, it just elevates the experience. I just get excited just thinking about that song. I can hear like 1 second of it, and I'm like taken back right to that ride station.
It's the most Efteling thing.
It is so Efteling
ever.
And which is a really nice compliment to give anything.
And it's what a soundtrack is supposed to do in a theme park. It's to lift up your spirit, and that's perfectly. It has the dramatic moments. It has the happy moments. It's an emotional roller coaster.
And it's And it's just a great ride too. Like you couldn't put good music on a bad ride and say like, well, it's a good ride because of the music. This is a good ride too.
But yeah, what's fantastic.
It's a positive association.
Having to like elevate the experience and like having you know get you in a feel and like setting that atmospheric tone that continues on in themed areas. And so our best themed area soundtrack goes to Tomorrowland and Shanghai Disneyland, which is a very atmospheric, peaceful, yet slightly upbeat atmospheric soundtrack that plays with the lights. And it's one of the first, and what I wrote in the article, I don't know the exact wording, I gotta look it up real quick, but I think I said something along the lines where I was like, this is the first time a Disney got it right with Tomorrowland.
Yeah.
They've always tried like the space thing, or they've tried like the super hyperactive music like Magic Kingdom, and it just doesn't work. It doesn't engulf me in the area and be like, wow, this really like makes me feel like I'm somewhere else. And the first time I was ever truly transported in one of the Tomorrowlands, not even Paris, was in Shanghai Disney's Tomorrowland, because the atmospheric music, it just worked. I was at a complete piece with a beautiful landscape that was just all metal and glass, with this really nice soundtrack.
The music is pleasant and optimistic sounding in a way that is a nice dichotomy with the more foreboding presence of Tron, and the theme that Tron has is pretty intense. So I enjoy that the music is delightful, verging on delightful, while also meshing really nicely with this. I to call it futuristic almost.
It's like an ambient futuristic.
Yeah,
is how I like to describe it. It's like a positive yet incredibly sophisticated.
It doesn't try
future.
too hard. It doesn't try hard to evoke futurism as a concept. It just feels just right for this area that doesn't necessarily. So me, Tomorrowland and Tron does a step better than trying to emulate the future. I've always believed that Tron at Shanghai Disney is fantastic in the sense. It's an
aesthetic. It's not a prediction.
Yeah,
and that's the difference. Even though Paris was
already
never a prediction,
timeless.
It was like a rehash of a past prediction of the future. All the other ones have all been like predicting, trying to do something with the future,
trying to cast the stone beyond time.
Yeah, and this
and hope that we don't catch up to it.
In an idea, it lives in a
this Tron
kind of like aesthetic, and it doesn't live in a timeline.
It exists outside of linear time. It's in its own multiverse,
and the music carries that perfectly, like absolutely perfectly.
I do want to give a shout out, even though we didn't mention them in the two last categories, to Imascore, because they also made their stamp on the theme park community, theme parks in the world by now.
Americans are finally getting the Imascore hype because of Orion at Kings Island. And the whole area, the Area 72 music.
So for the best themed area, I would also, two candidates that could have been there too for me were Klugheim in Phantasialand, without a doubt. But especially, but that's personally me, Avalon in Toverland as well. Because it just brings that happy mood and that atmosphere of the magical feeling. And it has a big variety also in the sound. And it's unlike some of the other Imascore soundtracks that they've made, because they tried new things there, and that was really nice to hear. Actually.
Yeah, I remember Avalon being incredibly sophisticated and in a way very calming. It was like the water and like even the way they built Phoenix, and then that music kind of again ties all together. I think there is a lot of music in the theme park industry that is either pop music or regional parks, which I just don't like, and then an attempt at atmospheric music or stylistically appropriate music, which is the majority of like the destination theme parks. But only very few theme park areas hit it on the nail when they have just a perfect atmospheric, just tying it all together. And there's only a few areas, and I don't think the decision making was very challenging to get to our nominees. The nominees were all like
it was Avalon, Klugheim,
right away.
Shanghai.
It was choosing from the few select outstanding musical scores in areas that was the hardest, I think. So thank you for bringing those up, Sven.
I mean, we'll just listen. Like, we'll listen to the Tron sound or the Shanghai Tomorrowland soundtrack for like it's on YouTube. It's like an hour and a half loop, and we'll just listen to it. We'll
Alex,
just put
say
it on.
something strange.
Just something really strange.
Something obscure.
Yeah.
Like,
We're going a few hours by train from Shanghai Disney to the winner for our most obscure roller coaster name.
which, I mean, obviously it's going to be in China.
Yeah.
There's no way around it.
There were some great candidates in Japan. Some of my favorites, like.
But what's the winner?
Are we going straight to the winner?
Yeah, because I like for this to be like a bang. I want people to know right away, like, this is the craziest thing you ever heard.
Which park is this at? Because I can't keep
This
them
is
all.
at Nanchang Sunak Land.
Nanchang Sunak Land. Okay. This is the best, most obscure coaster name. Spinning Porcelain, also known as Porcelain Puree, at Nanchang Sunak Land. It's Golden Horse, right? Jinma
Oh, yeah,
ride.
it's a Golden Horse.
Jinma rides basic. I mean, the coaster isn't too much to write home about. It's a standard Jinma rides ripoff of a Mauer spinner, but the theme is pottery, and
You are spinning on porcelain.
you are.
But you're also
You
porcelain
are
puri afterwards.
You are the. Yeah, the name is actually a sequence of events. You start out. You're on the pottery wheel, spinning. You are a lump of clay being remolded into the image of the artist, and then by the end of it, you're just grounded up puree, like carrot juice for a smoothie.
And the funny thing about this name is that we have like the two names, but that's really common in China. Like, there's literally two signs next to his ride. One says spinning porcelain, and then the sign right next to it says
Porcelain puree.
Because like translations are so wild in China that sometimes they'll give a ride an English name, but then also have the literal translation of the Chinese name. So, like, I think we wrote several things. Like, Falcon was also Eagle's Flight.
Yeah.
At Wuchi Sunak Land. And we're like, so which one is this? Is it Eagle? Is
The
it
fact
Eagle
that there
or
was
Falcon?
multiple
Like,
English names for rides, and that neither of them were the trade name. Because there's some countries, you go to Taiwan, every coaster has like three names. The Taiwanese name, and then like the trade name for the ride, and then like an English name, like G5, a G5 diving coaster, and then the Taiwanese name for it is Flying Submarine. Or at the same park, the Insane Speed Flying Car, which is their B&M floorless coaster, but it was also called Floorless Coaster in English subtitles, and then whatever the name was for it in Chinese.
I do want to give a shout out to like my second favorite that I really was toying with as making this the winner was the Shipwreck Construction Coaster or whatever it's called. What is it called again?
It's a
That's
a
like the worst name.
motorbike coaster that's themed to shipbuilding.
Yeah, it's like you're
At
literally
an
building
indoor
a
park
ship.
in China. You know, I really think Japan had some good ones. But Space Salamander at Expo Land will always be one of my favorites.
Yeah, it was called Shipbuilding Workshop, the ride
Shipbuilding
at
Workshop
Nanjing Wanda theme
at
park.
Nanjing Wanda Park.
So I guess the whole theme is you go on a motorbike fixing
Building-
shit.
Yeah.
What the hell?
And then another one.
Like, where does this come from?
The first thing that actually came to mind for me, because I'm not spinning porcelain is fairly new, no less deserving. But the first one that comes to mind when I think of like a great coaster is some of the family coasters in Japan, like Wham Wan Coaster Wandit at Yomiuri Land, which I don't know if these really mean anything. Like, I don't know if they are.
I wish I was Japan, which is like, oh, this sounds cute. This sounds
Or
kawaii.
the
Let's
family
just give it-
coaster at Space World was called Boogie Woogie Space Coaster. And I'm sad. I'm sad that Boogie Woogie Space Coaster and Space Salamander are no longer with us. Those are Southern Japan classics that...
Yeah, some words I can't even pronounce. Just like the location of our next park. I can't even pronounce the city name. Can you pronounce the city name?
He can say it beautifully. I'm very confident. Because every way
I'm
you
not
pronounce
sure
things
if
is
it's
wonderful.
correct, but I think it's Katowice.
Okay, it's better than I could have said.
That works
it.
for me.
And what park's located
I'll take
there?
it.
Legendia.
Legendia.
Which wins what category?
Best park layout.
Yay!
And this one, we're going to have Sven talk. It's all about it.
Yeah.
But we haven't been. So
Yeah.
Sven, tell us.
Yeah, but maybe first, best park layout. It's not an easy category. Like when
No.
we
It
talked
was
about
the
it, there
one
were a
thing
lot
we
of things
struggled
that
with the
came
most.
up, and it's like, is it the most practical, or is it the most beautiful, or does it have to be special, or And I think we settled for a mixture between practical and aesthetic. So why did we put Legendia then? Well, basically it's a big lake, and that's where all the rides are. It's as simple as that. But it really makes the lake the centerpiece of the whole park. And so it's also pretty huge, because when you enter the park, it's like a little main street. And from there, the first thing you see across the lake is Leg Coaster. So they really used it very good as well. Plus, it's also, the lake is kind of right, because you have a little boats that you can take up there right next to the Leg Coaster as well. So another thing is that there aren't really dead ends that I know of.
It's like a true loop.
Yeah.
Virtually no.
Mm-hmm.
Tendrils.
So like it's, for me, it's less is more, and I think that's something a lot of parks struggle with by having not that transparent way of walking around.
Yeah, and the first conversation we had is like the first thing our minds kind of jumped to when we started this conversation among the team was, well, Tokyo Disneyland has the most perfect layout. Everything is like a direct line.
Tokyo
from
Disney is
else.
like the Pentagon. Like
everything is super close.
It's eerily efficient to the point where it's no longer charming.
But then again, the problem, like, well, everything is super connected, and you can walk from one ride to another within like 2 minutes from anywhere in the park. The problem became, well, the themes are always bleeding. There is not a single area that I feel like has its own kind of theme. And
like Pirates of the Caribbean is connected to the hub at Tokyo Disney. It does not
all
feel
the Fantasyland rides
it doesn't
just
feel
like
right that
all
you
lined
can
up.
see Cinderella's castle from the entrance to Pirates of the Caribbean completely unobstructed. Like it's just plugged right in, which is obviously great for traffic flow. I mean, there's no better traffic flow in the world than the traffic flow for Tokyo Disney. But then it comes at a price. It does come at the expense of some of the rides just don't feel like they have the presence that they should, because they're so dominated by the vast network of massive midway.
And that's, I think, where like the connection became like, well, yeah, you want something that's somewhat efficient. You don't want like the weirdest park layout where it takes forever to get from point A to point B. But you also want something that like is aesthetically pleasant. And then sometimes like we said, less is more. And so Legendia was a good option here because it doesn't try to combine too many different themes, and it doesn't have too much infrastructure to the point where like you have to navigate a bunch of different themed areas just to get to another.
Yeah.
And I think that's why Islands of Adventure was a contender but fell away. It's because if you want to get from like Potter to Hoke, you have to go to like three completely different themed areas.
Yeah.
And like at that point, it becomes
there's some bleeding there,
and there's bleeding, and so.
But I knew the winner was going to have a giant central lagoon because I feel like that's
the best parks of Central Lagoon.
That's like my favorite way to see a park situated is with a large lake or a lagoon kind of dictating the shape, and in a perfect world being a pretty smooth circle that doesn't have a lot of dead ends or bottlenecks, and so Legendia was perfect.
Yeah, I think we don't have that category, but the most annoying layout, or one of the most annoying, must be Alton Towers, because
Alton Towers
like
is such
getting
a pain
from
in the
one
ass.
side.
We did like a sarcastic show.
Yeah.
Sorry, from
Six
getting
Flags
from
Great
one side to the
Adventure.
other side is really hard.
Six Flags Great Adventure is the most terribly organized
Six Flags
park.
America.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
From Batwing to Mind Eraser is literally like a 4-hour hike. No, not quite that intense.
Just
but
the
it's
infrastructure
super-
setup is so... Yeah, Six Flags America used to be pretty normal looking until they started expanding past Wild One, and then it just became like this weird like hook-shaped series of dead ends with coasters. But for me, Thorpe Park also wasn't the best. It was like it's shaped like a hand, or at least it was when I went, because they had a huge chunk of it closed off to build Darren Brown's Ghost Train. But I remember walking through that park and thinking there couldn't possibly be a park that was more convoluted to navigate than Alton Towers. And yet Thorpe Park seemed to have achieved a similar feat with much less square footage. I'm like, wow, they really accomplished something here by having such a dreadfully pain-in-the-ass park to navigate despite not being very big.
Reminds you of Dream World in Australia.
Oh, my God.
That park that is absolute trash.
We haven't been, but we did a YouTube walkthrough
walkthrough?
of that park, and just walking
I wanted to just die.
Just
in
yeah,
bed. I
like
was just
from the
laying there.
point
I
of view
wanted
of the
to die.
cameraman, I'm so frustrated
For you.
by how this park is organized. Like, I hate it so much. Still a bucket lister for us, though.
But yeah, I would say, generally speaking, like Central Lagoons are definitely the kind of like key to a good park layout. And speaking of Central Lagoons, our next category is located beautifully on the end of a Central Lagoon.
Yes.
Our
It was a
next
contender,
category
definitely.
is the best non-ride attraction, which is going to go to the Whale Shark Aquarium at Chamlong Ocean Kingdom in Henking Bay in South China.
If you know us, you know that this is our favorite park, and that, like...
If you know aquariums, you'll know how big of a deal this aquarium is.
If you happen to be a private aquarium aficionado and you think that the Georgia Aquarium and stuff is one of America's best assets, then this is a category that you care about.
Yeah, this is the world's largest aquarium with an incredibly large aquarium wall, home to 5 whale sharks and a couple of thousand other
Species of
and sea creatures.
critters.
And
Creators.
this is an incredibly massive operation, and it's all within Chamlong Ocean Kingdom. So I would say this could have easily been a standalone attraction where they charge $70 a day for.
Yeah.
Because it's that incredibly nice. And we spent at least 3 hours in there. But it's part of a theme park.
It's just one of the attractions.
And
at
that's
this
why
park.
it was almost like uncontestedly like the best non-ride attraction, because the fact that is inside a theme park, it's greater than any walkthrough. It's greater than any aquarium. Even the parks that are dedicated to aquariums don't do it as well as this thing does.
It's absolutely uncanny that the largest aquarium, the largest oceanarium in the world, the biggest record-breaking place keeping of live fish for viewing entertainment, is also the only one of any in the top contending aquariums or anything that isn't just a standalone attraction. It's absolutely mind-blowing that all like the second largest and most loved is the Georgia Aquarium, which is the record that was held before Chamlong Ocean Kingdom broke it almost 10 years after the Georgia Aquarium opened. And Georgia Aquarium is a major tourist destination for the entire southeastern United States. So the fact, for anyone that's familiar, if you can imagine the Georgia Aquarium being twice as large, but also just being a single attraction inside of a pay-one-price theme park, that's the kind of like mind-blowingness that we're looking at with
There's
this.
a reason that this park gets a higher attendance than Shanghai Disneyland does, and it's the highest attended park in China. And that's because the product is so incredibly massive and luxurious and over the top that, like, again, it's something that's larger than the Georgia Aquarium is literally just another attraction in this massive themed experience. And that's why, I mean, there's really not much to talk about except for it's really great, and that's why it won.
This park is,
without a doubt,
everyone
best
knows
live
that we
attraction.
like worship this park, and it was a contender, honestly. Like, it was in the top 5 for like several of these categories that we're talking about. Like, there were so many. Like, this park has a great layout. There's great area music here. There's some funny
really
coaster
highly
names.
detailed wind coaster trains.
There's Rolling Stock is up there. Like, overall theme commitment. Like, this park is such a top performer. Any way you look at it. Live performances, shows, parades, nighttime spectaculars, rides, coasters, dark rides, and in this case, the best non-ride attraction.
I forgot. Did you guys go 1 day or 2 days?
We did
We
one.
actually
We
just
should have
did
done
one,
two.
and-
We did open to close though, which
Yeah.
and there was no one there. We went on for some magical reason.
we
like a really good
opened,
Thursday.
and the park was empty, and we still were. It still took us
God,
till
leaving
dusk
was-
to get all of the credits because we were so.
Well, yeah, there's not that many coasters, so our goal was like, oh, let's hit the credits and then everything else. But then we got so
The
distracted
content.
that it was 4 p.m.
We were
still
so
hadn't even
wrapped
gone
up
to Mount
in
Walrus yet.
everything.
We were just like, oh wow, these river dolphins. Oh wow, look at these.
Yeah, Chinese river dolphins
Like, it was a
stealing the
never-ending
show.
exploration station.
Yeah.
So yeah, next
Okay.
time we're gonna go several days.
This park also would have been a contender for our next award, which is Park with Best Pavement. And this
I think
is,
everyone can guess
this is
one,
kind
right?
of a funny. Well, I mean, I would hope so. I mean, anyone that's been to this park that won the category is going to be like, oh yeah, totally. The reason that we even have this category is because we feel like what you walk on when you're walking through a theme park absolutely can make or break the storytelling component. Some parks have concrete midways or just whatever material they use. Some parks have midways that are so ugly that it like brings the entire experience down, whether it's a themed experience or not. I mean,
Yeah, like think of Western themed areas, but concrete. I mean, it happens a lot in the U.S. Like almost every park has a Western themed area, like especially from parks in the '90s. And like, if there's concrete flooring, the whole idea of like this Western town is gone because it's supposed to be just dust and sand, which obviously doesn't work in a theme park. But if you don't even try, it's not going to work.
There really aren't a lot of themed areas that lend themselves to having a cement ground, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Some parks, I mean, some of the traditional parks out there with like the brick pavers and stuff makes the aesthetic. It changes the entire feel of a park like that. So for us, thinking about that and thinking about how what you're walking on at a park,
which pathways truly transported us to some other place.
Figuratively and literally taking us to different worlds in this category. It had to be Disney's Animal Kingdom, because nothing quite sets the stage for your transportation to Asia, Pandora, Africa, even Dinoland USA.
Better for worse.
It's truly the red carpet upon you walk. This storytelling, this character, this history almost. They make the lands of these areas look like they've always been there. It's, pure magic in the sense, in the Disney sense.
Yeah, like if you were, even for the queues, if you walk, for example, for Kali River Rapids, from the little village over to the temples, every inch of that queue, every bit of theming is incorporated with the floor somehow. Like the ground, the pavement, just completely, like if you're going over rocks, it's like rocks, and if you're in the temples, it's like old brick that's smudged.
They have queues that that look like substrate, like it's loose material on the floor, but it's actually an illusion. It's gathered. It's a gathered, high impact walking area.
And this is also one of the very few parks in the world where the vast majority of pavement is uniquely themed and or thematically appropriate. Even the entrance to the park is. Like even the very first thing you do before you even see the Tree of Life, you're going to like a forest. And so there's only one area where it's concrete/asphalt, which is literally the part of the park that's themed to a county fair on the parking lot, which is really themed to that as well. So I guess even then it's thematically.
It was ironic and yet
appropriate.
flimsy, because they did build Chester and Hester's Dinorama on what used to be employee parking,
but it worked,
and then it actually worked
even
with
there, it's
this like Route
correct.
66 like dumpy sideshow theme that they chose on purpose because they knew it would be a cost efficient measure. So it actually carried the legacy of Animal Kingdom's commitment to using the floor as the first step in your storytelling component.
It really helped with making areas like Africa and Asia feel very vintage, which leads us to our next ride.
Before we go there, I want to say that now, the first time I visit Animal Kingdom, I'll look at the floor a lot.
Yeah, look at your feet.
It's not hard because you will trip if you don't watch out.
Floor to ceiling is a
Definitely
feast for the eyes. Yeah. Oh yeah, that's true.
But I like vintage, Sean.
Why is that, Sven?
Yeah, we're going to the best vintage ride collection. And I think most theme park fans will have this one park in mind. Maybe in the US you'll think of something else, but especially in Europe, I think most of you will think about Blackpool Pleasure Beach. And I went there 2 years ago, and you're really stepping back in time. Of course, a big part of that is because of the wooden coasters, which have been there for years and years and years, but still go pretty decently. There's, of course, Revolution, and even the big one, I think, stands out.
Yeah, they've got some historic aero rides. You might think not everybody is as big of a fan of like 100-year-old wooden coasters as me, but if you're a fan of like neoclassics, like this 1970s being such an exciting era for steel coaster development, and the 90s too, the 70s, the 90s, and like pre-World War II era.
This is one of the few parks that, even if you haven't been, in my case, it just screams vintage. Like I look at even one picture of the park, and I'm like, wow, this park looks like it is straight from like 100 years ago, you know?
And also the dark rides add up to that, because Alice in Wonderland, the Ghost Train,
these are
the cave one.
Yeah, the River Caves, 1905 was when that opened. There was a modification made like in the 30s, I think, to give it the little drop that it has. It used to just be a simple. It used to be just a basic old mill. I mean, it really is still quite basic. I mean, before Disney started doing like the Small World and Pirates of the Caribbean style, like pumped flumes. Flume rides like this had just a small lift hill and a trough with water in it, and it was just all gravity drifting. You just made your way through like you would down a very gentle stream with no moving parts except for at the very, very beginning after you crested the little conveyor lift.
And it's also interesting how the modern easily integrates in that vintage setting, like Icon. For me, it felt like, I saw it was new, but it blended in very well with the existing rides, and just looking at the coaster and then seeing all those other coaster tracks around it and the vintage style. I think Icon
to me looks like it really, you know how like Big Dipper has all of that Art Deco artwork and stuff, like the chrome, like steel fountains, and there's a lot of like classic art that is very mod in Blackpool, like from the 50s and 60s, and Icon like lends itself so nicely to that.
I think they deserve a shout out for that, because I think they really deliberately chose the color palette, the chrome, just so like it would really be just another.
There's so much Art Deco
piece
revival,
in this like vintage looking park. Which is really cool.
I mean, there's so much. Like the Derby Racer carousel, which really isn't even that old compared to some of their stuff, but it's priceless, and it has like that glass tile mosaic and the pipe organ that plays Queen songs. Like, oh man, there's just nothing better. The car ride, the Aero car ride, the Grand Prix was built in 1960. That makes it older than like Autopia at Disneyland as we know it, because it took them several years to get Autopia, sorted out as far as like the development of like the center guardrail. So like that technology, that ride is as much of golden era amusement park technology development as Disneyland is. And then there's like the flying machines, the cable suspended little rockets, 1904.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
The oldest amusement park attraction in Europe, and certainly one of the oldest in the world. And yet still such a satisfying, like memorable, quintessentially Blackpool Pleasure Beach experience. They make a lot of hard decisions. I mean, at the end of the day, it's a business. You got to be profitable. You got to keep people safe.
Wild Mouse.
People are mad and sad about Wild Mouse being demolished, but based on my rides on Wild Mouse, I'm not surprised at all. I mean, yeah, it was super cool, but like, that ride has probably sent way more than its fair share of riders to the first aid stand, maybe even sent a few to the hospital. I mean, it was one of the most terrifying and violent experiences ever, and I'm like, no theme park in 2020 can afford the lawsuit that a ride like Wild Mouse was sure to deliver at some point or another. So some people are going to say that, like, no park that demolishes a ride like Wild Mouse is worthy of being called like the best vintage ride amusement park. But at the end of the day, I mean, this park still has, the Wild Mouse was only their 5th oldest wooden coaster. The other 4 wooden coasters in the park that are older and more historic are intact. I think they're running great. Big Dipper being the oldest coaster in the park, 1923, is, it's a back adjustment, but it's a good ride. It's my favorite ride there. It's my favorite ride in Great Britain. So yeah, I don't think it's a hard choice at all. I mean, Kennywood is really the only other park that I think a lot of people think of when they think of this, and it's Kennywood level, Kennywood at its best, but even more. Like, there's just even more and older and more memorable and historic. Just like a higher volume of it, and I think a better setting.
Because I don't know Kennywood, but it's the boardwalk style that kind of reflects on the park, and that's what you think of a classic, like
it's like
classic
Victorian revival seaside Pleasure Beach, 1890s kind of feel in places. So really, we thought was one of the best ways to give a shout out to the United Kingdom, because there's a lot of there's a lot that country can be remembered for as far as theme parks go. But I think at the end of the day, Blackpool's living, breathing ride history museum that you can experience is.
Well, yeah, we've always kind of had like most historic awards or best seaside park awards, and I'm surprised no one ever really hit it rather than with vintage, because there are some parks like Santa Cruz Beach Boardwalk or Kennywood or even in a way more Pierce
or
Knoebels. And of course Blackpool Pleasure Beach, which for the Europeans is pretty great because most of the really classic old surviving parks are in the US. And so I really think this was a great category to introduce, but also we had like the perfect winner for it too. I think there's undoubtedly Blackpool Pleasure Beach took that one.
Yeah.
Question is, do they have dinosaurs?
They do, actually.
I was going to ask,
they
do. This is overall theme, but either way.
They have a little Disney-inspired like mine train through Nature's Wonderland and Primeval World at Blackpool.
But do they have a 4D coaster through a forest?
No.
See,
and they don't have Dinosaur Mountain.
So our award for most unique overall theme goes to the park, which has a whole entire park dedicated to the theme of dinosaurs.
It's every 4-year-old American boy's dream.
Possible
also in Europe.
Yeah. Something about little kids and dinosaurs.
Ticket, so it's not
the
like
world.
Out of the blue.
In Changsha, China, you never outgrow your obsession with dinosaurs.
Because they are considered Jurassic Park in the East. They have the largest collection of dinosaur fossils in the Eastern world. And so our most unique overall theme award goes to China Dinosaur Land. Also known as China Dinosaur Park, but on our visit we saw the word land everywhere. So that's
true to form for China, multiple English translations and also a Chinese translation.
This park is completely nuts. Like out of this world, some dinosaur high fantasy, like you're on drugs. There's like every possible theme. So imagine walking through a city and there's like graffiti and you're like in a back alley, but there's also dinosaurs.
You're in like
you're in the
metro. You're in like
snakes,
urban.
But the snakes are also dinosaurs. Yeah. And then you're going on a studio tour that also ends up being like a jungle cruise, but it's also with dinosaurs.
Or you're going to like Seuss Landing at Islands of Adventure, but instead of the Who's,
there's baby dinosaurs. And so...
Or you're like going shopping in like a really fancy shopping plaza, and you have like all of these nice clothing stores and like fashions and like handbags and sunglasses. It's all dinosaurs.
And then you're in a Mediterranean harbor, and it's like sunny out.
Yeah,
and
it's a beach.
And all the residents are out, but the residents are dinosaurs. And then
the Stegosaurus is sunbathing.
And then you go through these rocky canyons and jungles, and you even enter a mountain, which is filled with dinosaurs. So like the whole theme park.
It wasn't enough for them to have like all of these themed areas. It's one thing for a park. This was a trend obviously that was spearheaded by Disney, where like everything is kind of fantasy. You have Fantasyland, but then you have like the fantasy future, the fantasy yesterday.
But there was never really a tangible, like, reoccurring character.
The theme, the overarching theme here that permeates all of these themed areas. It's more than just having a jungle area, an urban area, a kiddie area, a beach area. It's dinosaur jungle, dinosaur urban, dinosaur beach area. And we never realized how amazing that, like, it wasn't something we were thinking about until we were there.
I kind of looked at it as Walibi Holland. So if those who are familiar with Walibi Holland, you know they have some really extreme and more pop culture themes there. Like Untamed, which is, the wilderness, overgrown. And then there's the entrance, which is really flashy, and the Hall of Fame and art and all that kind of stuff.
Pop culture.
Festivalization.
Hollywood revival.
Festivalization is what they call that. And they have Lost Graph, all the containers.
Yeah.
Imagine pretty much Walibi Holland, a little bit larger with like Dinoconda in the middle of it. But then imagine all that, but just with like a bunch of dinosaurs added to it.
And like the dinosaurs are all living their best lives, representing that aesthetic.
Dinosaurs and like shipping containers with a disco with like a DJ dinosaur in a shipping container area. Like I don't even know how to come up with this.
Yeah, it's like Vanilla Ice came in and designed a theme park area with dinosaurs based on his aesthetic.
But it was legit like Liddy Titty because we had the funnest time there.
I can't believe you just said Liddy Titty on the podcast.
I think it's not That's a funny word.
That's one of our favorites.
Liddy Titty. Yeah, these dino titties.
I mean, you walk into the park and you get what you would expect, which is they have an area that's Skull Island, like King Kong, note for note. They even have that Husk
But
King
with
Kong.
brown color.
They have
Oh,
the
yeah.
Husk King
Rocks,
Kong
though.
ride that Bobbejaanland has. They still have that, right?
Oh, yeah.
This is the only other known installation of that ride, but here
It's
was
fun
like
seeing it.
very significant to the overall theme, which
The line was too long, or we would have totally
Yeah.
done that.
I videotaped it. I was like, this is how I'm getting my credit these days for flat rides, is by videotaping them and moving on.
You didn't miss anything.
Yeah, I know it really looks more like like an audio animatronic that you ride, for better or for worse.
Oh, yeah.
So
That's about it.
But yeah, I feel like that's the only park I've ever been to that has such a complete
the only
dedication to
one that I
theme.
thought about, like, really, it was like we needed to highlight this park for that accomplishment because there's just no other place that comes close to that level of a definitive theme that's permeates the whole park. But one that is close is Bonbon Land. Because Bonbon Land has several themes. Like, they've got Western themes and like nature and fantasy and kids and stuff, but it's also their whole like humor
Well, there
of
was
the
definitely
cartoons
like
and
several
stuff.
approaches we could have taken because you could have also gone with like Efteling, which feels completely cohesive and like
Yeah.
theming and dedication to like
Yeah.
you know a themed aspect of the resort. But I think when we started thinking about all these parks that are really consistent, have a great overall theme and atmosphere, we kind of came down to it like, well, there's only one that really has like this one dedication and
Yeah.
they make it work. And I think that's when Dinosaur Park just kind of, or
it's
Dinosaur
so
Land kind of became it.
special and unorthodox, and people need to be talking about it. Like, people should be aware
I mean, it is a pretty popular park. I think
that
it's in
there's
the
a
top
theme
5
park
most
that has
favorite
all
parks
of
in
these
China,
themes,
so.
but also the unifying theme of dinosaurs.
Is there a
So-
dinosaur dark ride?
There is not, but there are other parks with really great dark rides.
Our next park, our next category, does in a sense have a dinosaur dark ride a little bit.
But it has a lot more.
It has more. It's got a lot more than dinosaurs. Most our best dark ride lineup is one that we thought about a lot because so many of the parks that we talk about, whether it's this particular podcast or on previous parks and stuff, we are definitely dark ride people. Disney parks, Universal parks, Efteling are ones that come to mind when we think of like the best overall collection of dark rides. There's a few other parks that may not have that big of a collection of dark rides, but ones that you can't talk about dark rides without talking about, like Pirates of the Caribbean in Shanghai or Final Sea Battle at Wuchi Sunak Land.
And it's funny because we kind of started like tallying rides at one point. We're like, yeah, well, these are all really great.
Yeah.
And like, wow, this park has this many rides. And we start tallying, and then we realized like there's
only one
crazy lineup out there,
and
that we kind of took taken for granted.
it's so easy
forever.
to take this park for granted,
especially if you're a pass holder.
but yeah, Disneyland in Anaheim is
The OG
the
Disneyland.
only, because of its age, and it has been around for so long and has continued to grow, despite the second gate next door or despite challenges with land, with finances. Disneyland, there's always something to be said for quality over quantity. Disneyland has both.
Oh, yeah,
Disneyland
for
has
sure.
all of the quality and all of the quantity.
True.
It's hard.
You want to start listing some?
It's hard for me to even remember that Rise of the Resistance is there because it's such a new thing for me, and they certainly didn't need it in the sense that, like, the park, I've never once gone to Disneyland at Anaheim and felt like they were lacking anything. So the fact that they have Rise of the Resistance, which is, you know, whether you like Star Wars or not, it's one of the best dark rides in the world. Like, it's pretty impressive. So I'm like, oh my God, like, this park that already had this stellar dark ride lineup now also has Rise of the Resistance. Rise of the Resistance on top of Indiana Jones Adventure Temple of the Forbidden Eye, on top of the original Haunted Mansion, the original Pirates of the Caribbean, Roger Rabbit's cartoon spin.
All the fancy land rides.
All of the fantasy,
Peter Pan.
the most fabulous collection. Yeah,
Yep.
Peter Pan, Snow
Mr.
White, Pinocchio,
Toad.
Mr. Toad, Alice in Wonderland.
Storybook
The
Canals.
storybook, well, yeah, that's sort of an indoor,
Yeah,
like an outdoor
it's
dark
outdoor.
ride, but scenes and vignetted like a dark ride.
Well, Small
It
World
also has
Starts
Buzz
Outdoors, goes
Lightyear.
inside.
Small World, Buzz Lightyear.
Oh yeah, I like to forget that even exists. But yeah, even that is there.
And I guess the submarines, the Finding Nemo submarines count
Finding
too.
Nemo submarine voyage.
That's so crazy. Like, how many do we have here?
Disneyland
like a dozen?
Express with the Primeval World.
Yeah.
That's our dinosaur ride. That's our
That is where our
the
dinosaurs
primeval,
came in.
the mine train, the
Well, I
train
guess
ride
there's a
through
dinosaur in Big Thunder
nature's.
Mountain, too.
Oh yeah. And
Well, a
on
dead
Big Thunder,
one.
there's a dinosaur in Big. Oh yeah,
skull,
the fossil.
The dinosaur.
The fossil. Yeah, dark rides are such a significant characteristic in this park that every ride also has dark ride components. Matterhorn has dark ride components. Splash Mountain
That's very Disney, though.
is a dark ride for all intents and purposes. The dark ride level is so stellar and so high, and this park has like 7 or 8 magnificent e-ticket dark rides, like truly e-ticket dark rides, including several D-ticket dark rides, like all of our little Fantasyland rides and stuff. And to top it all off, they have a bun in the oven. They have another, this might not be our favorite dark ride in the world, but it's certainly a crowd pleaser. Mickey and Minnie's Runaway Railway, debuting in 2022.
The foreseeable future, the best dark collection will remain at Disneyland.
It would take another park, even our other contenders, it would take Efteling or Disneyland Paris or Shanghai Disney multiple e-ticket dark rides
to get to
Disneyland's Anaheim's
and
level.
The great thing is that Disneyland Park is actually kind of small, so they use this space so efficiently.
This is where all the people go when you have the capacity. It is a really excellent use of limited space.
And speaking of limited space, our transitions do work.
And still, there are other parks that have
that
bigger
have even
challenges,
better optimization. And so, our next category, Sven,
the best use of limited space.
Which
now,
goes to?
If you talk about a theme park that has a road underneath it where you can drive to go to the parking lot, where you have houses like... It's basically their garden theme park.
Like the property line.
Yeah, the property is so close. And then you have to build in several levels because otherwise you can't fit all of your theming in there. So it's Fantasyland.
It's Fantasyland. Disneyland and Groneland were major competitors in this category, but you could only give it to the park that has a B&M invert of impressive size and length, half buried in the ground and hovering over a bus stop that's parked outside of the park.
And not only the B&M invert, it also has like one of the most famous Intamin Blitz coasters.
Yeah.
Well,
and
I like to,
a Vekoma flying coaster.
Vekoma Flyer.
I like to talk about this park as like it has arguably the best invert, the best multi-launch coaster, the best Vekoma Mine Train,
best
the
spinning
best spinning
coaster,
and best flying coaster,
and the best shooting dark ride,
and one of
the best thrill rides.
Yeah,
one of the best Lock Flume, perhaps.
Best Mine Train.
Lock Flume,
and they're all.
Sure.
It is literally located in like one city block.
Yeah,
it is crazy.
And it's that limited space that drove them to think about how to use and how
the innovation factor was out of necessity.
Everyone that's listening, you have to go to Google Earth and go to like your satellite images or like Google Maps and go to satellite and look Fantasyland. You'll be blown away how incredibly small this park is if you've ever been. And the fact that like you can spend a whole day there and not get tired. You can spend several days. And there's 3 hotels. Like how did they fit 3 hotels?
They have one of the best fun houses that you can find anymore.
Without Tartuffe?
I mean, they only do it to win. They don't just build rides to build them. If it's not a contender for the best in category in the world, Fantasyland's not building it. They won't do it. It's the best or nothing. Even Geister Rickshaw is a pretty amazing accomplishment because it's Chinese Haunted Mansion and it's under the Midway.
Oh, Pirates Haunted Mansion.
But it's Rickshaw. It's Chinese.
Well, yeah, but it has like the pirates.
But it's also pirates.
It's like the big pirate ship.
It's
the
Haunted Mansion meets Pirates of the Caribbean in Shanghai, in like old Shanghai.
I don't think we should focus on the ride. It's so trash.
But it's amazing because you're like walking on top of the ride the whole time, and you would never know.
It's true. Yeah. If it weren't for the emergency exit, I wouldn't even know there was a freaking ride.
The first time I went to Fantasyland, I didn't ride it because I didn't know it was there. And then Sven took us to ride it, and I'm like, "Where are we go? What is this?"
I love when people reference.
And then we rode it, and I'm like, "Oh my god, this ride is huge!"
Not even know they were there. Yeah.
Or like Hollywood Boat Ride and Phantasma and Temple of the Lift Hill in one building, and it's literally like a 3-layer cake. Of e-ticket attractions.
I can't believe they have this little lake over behind the houses.
I mean, look.
Some people will say yes.
Boat Ride was an e-ticket ride when it opened.
But yeah, I mean, it's nothing short of amazing the way they work with sidelines. Because, okay, so it's one thing to use your space very efficiently. And just build a ton of rides.
Because, like, Groneland has rides on top of rides on top of rides.
They have these intricately themed areas with incredible sidelines. Like, when you're in Klugheim, you can't see any other theme. When you're in Africa, you can maybe see Mexico, but, like, you can't really see much else.
And Rookburg, it's really enclosed. Like, it's only when you're standing very high that you obviously can see some things.
Rookburg is like a Diagon Alley level of zeroing in in and filling your entire field of vision with only canonical.
And having a portal into the land.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
It's almost, speaking of Harry Potter, when I think of Phantasialand, I think of driving up to it, and nothing resembles a theme park. You only know if it's Phantasialand if you have if you can recognize Mystery Castle.
Yeah, that's the only
and its height.
Yeah, you can see it from like the city.
You know, if you're a Muggle and you try to go to Hogwarts, it's like just an abandoned old castle. You can't see it unless you're magical,
or if you're.
Yeah,
or how did all the Muggles go on the tour of Hogwarts at Universal?
I think you have to be like given magical clearance or something.
Well, I wish I knew that.
Yeah, because you can't if you try, because Hogwarts exists in real life, but it's not. It flies under the radar because you're only allowed to see it if the magical people allow you to see it. That's what Phantasialand reminds me of, because when you could walk a lap around Phantasialand and not know that it's a theme park.
We didn't know where to park when we went on our trip because we didn't park where some parks under the park, under the road.
Yeah.
We parked where the employees parked.
We parked at the old main entrance,
and so we first drove the wrong way, and we were like, "There's this bus stop and this little this fry shop," and we looked like we were in this little German town. Which, if anyone that knows little German towns, are super mundane.
It's like a little village,
like little slightly unappealing villages, and then there was this little bus stop, and we have this big tall wall. We're like, why is behind this big tall wall?
And then they sent a train.
Oh yeah, we saw the Black Mamba
and you can see
Black
Mamba train over the bus stop. And we're like, oh my god!
When you're in the park, you think that Africa goes on forever, but really there's an inch.
Yeah, when you're in the park,
past your feet,
you're not in the little German village anymore.
It was just wild.
And when you're in that village, you're only in Phantasialand if Phantasialand allows it.
Was such a perfect blending from little small German village through Old Berlin into the rest of the park. Phantasialand has done it right repeatedly, and that's why it won this category.
Yeah,
hands down.
Yeah, other contenders. I mean, there's
Indiana Beach has really good space.
There's some really space.
But it's ugly.
Indiana Beach is fine. It's not ugly in the sense that not ugly in the sense that it's like poorly maintained or gross. It's just a traditional park doing traditional park things.
But I don't know a lot of parks that have 3 rides on top of each other.
Yeah.
Oh no, I think that's the only
park.
Yeah,
the 7-layer dip amusement park approach has been mastered by Phantasialand. Groenland and its 5 drop towers, couldn't hope to compare to the majesty of a drop tower inside of a brick building, made to look like a castle.
Yeah, and even the Winges area, there's a whole kiddie area on top of the building.
I know. I remember walking up there, and I was like,
the Tittle Tattle tree.
Well, there's
that's
a whole
third
but then
level. On top of that, on the side, there is still another kiddie area where they have a show.
Crawl.
I think. Even.
I wanted to go in there, but I wasn't allowed.
Yeah, it was pretty abandoned.
Okay.
But yeah, and so it's one of the only parks with such limited space, with so many e-ticket attractions, that then also manages to have such an incredible atmosphere no matter where you go. And on the topic of atmosphere,
the last category,
final Crystal Crown Award.
This is the only park that won 2 categories. Can anyone? I wonder if our listeners could guess best park atmosphere.
Okay.
And 3. It's the only park that has won 2.
1. Best Park Atmosphere Award goes to...
Could only be...
It is...
The Efteling!
Yay!
Een wereld vol wonderen, as we say in the Netherlands.
What was that?
Full of wonders, really.
Oh.
Yeah, so...
No, say it Dutch again. That was...
Een wereld vol wonderen.
Very nice.
Sven likes that, too, because Sven speaks Dutch.
You guys talk so good. Y'all got pretty voices. It's so beautiful. I'm like, the Efteling, y'all. And where is it located? In
Kaatsheuvel, Noord-Brabant.
Kaatsheuvel.
That's what you used to scoop the litter box with.
Yeah.
The cat shovel.
Okay. You're underselling the park for talking about cat shit. This is this park is far from cat shit. This is the shit.
This park is the shit.
The shit. I don't even know where to begin. I feel like being in Efteling is it's just the one of the few parks in the world where I just completely feel like I'm somewhere else.
It's not just a place; it's a state of mind.
It really is, though, and they have this really strong sort of unique theme / atmosphere that just carries over no matter where in the park you are.
Disney level, but the whole park is that mood. It's a little bit like we wanted to give Efteling an atmosphere award, kind of like how we wanted to give China Dinosaurs Park like an overall theme award. But they felt really different in the sense where like Efteling is super committed, but it has a feel to it that is so strong and so dedicated and so it's elegant and substantial.
I'm having just a
in
hard
way
time
that other
finding
parks
a
are
correct
not.
word for it. Like it is sort of fantasy, which I guess it is fantasy, but it's also very appropriately Dutch. There's a lot of Dutch classic themes.
There's
like
not really a
Golden
lot of
Age
subsections.
stuff.
Like there's minor subsectioning, but it's really one.
The subsection
big
talks more
mood.
about like the intensity level of attractions. Like there's
But
a
there's like
subsection
individual,
Rugwijk,
there's
which has all
individual
the,
rides that kind of
roller
take you to a
coasters.
different place. Like Fata Morgana takes place in a different location than like where other rides in the park canonically take place per their theme, or like Vogelrock.
But I think it's the like bringing to life of folklore, which I guess is a good
Yeah.
place to start.
It is.
Yeah.
That really brings
Folklore
Efteling.
and fairy
Efteling-
tales, obviously. That's
Efteling
like
is
the core.
a cottage core wonderland.
Oh yeah, I mean, again, the park started first before it became anything. It was a place you just walk around, and then it became the fairy tale forest, which is probably its big claim to fame. It's still one of the world's biggest fairy tale forests, and it is spectacular. It's just like an experience. You
They've
have to
got to
spend
have
a
some
couple
kind of
hours
record
there.
for most number of carousels in a pay one
Right,
price.
they have like 5
They've got like
carousels,
5
I think.
carousels. I think only Vienna Prater could hope to have more, and it's because it's different vendors with different carousels. But
And then
But
they
as
have a
it-
really strong collection of dark rides, which all do a really good job telling a story, including
Well,
Droomvlucht.
Maybe not all of them, but
Well, which
Droomvlucht.
starting one?
wait, which one don't you
Carnival
like?
Festival is
Carnival Festival is amazing, and as someone who is a huge fan of It's a Small World, I could
Exactly.
even-
That's why you find it
I could,
amazing.
I could see past the emulation, the imitation is the best form of flattery.
I mean, that
kind of
park has so
component.
many like super dark and mystical themes that like you need to have something that's jolly because Fata Morgana is not jolly. I feel like I'm literally like scared on that ride.
Carnival Festival is such a heartwarming experience.
And then Flick of the Hollander is a pretty intense theme, like out in the open sea with like your
Vogelrock is intense too. You're getting kidnapped
Vogelrock's
by a
intense.
carnivorous bird.
yeah, and then like Baron is like the Witte Wieve, the ghost from whatever.
Barons,
You know,
like the
mine
ghosts
shaft.
trying to kill you. Like, aren't they taking
Yeah,
you as
they,
their
like, are
prisoner?
possessing
Like,
the
they're
mind
trying
you're
to
cursed.
stop you.
Yeah, they're
But
gonna
no,
bury
what you
alive.
said, Sean, is the fairy tale forest is the heart of the Efteling, and they took that strength and they used it for the whole park, and
Yeah.
that's I think was a smart choice, not to have different themed areas,
Themed
but to have the
areas.
whole theme and connect the different rides with each other. Even though every ride has its own story
Has its
to
own
tell,
story,
and
yeah.
storytelling is all about the core of the Efteling, I think.
I guess that's another thing that really sets this park apart from like China Dinosaurs Land. Is China Dinosaurs Land is all about aesthetic, and there's not really a lot of storytelling. Like it's not really about that. It's about having a neat theme where you have, production model rides and
But
cool
just on the
coasters and stuff.
global scale, the storytelling is very, very strong at Efteling. So strong even that became an overarching atmosphere. Like you knew there was always something being told. There was always a story being told, and that really played into like the atmosphere. Like that no matter where you go in Efteling, there is something happening. And there's very few parks out there that do that. And when they do, it's usually like very separated themed areas.
Yeah, I mean,
And
Disney
Efteling doesn't
parks
quite
do a
that.
great job with compartmentalizing different themes that may not even be related at all. I mean, none of the castle parks can really claim to have a single overarching theme, except that it's, like I said, kind of fantasy projections. Certainly rose-tinted looks at the past, things like colonialism in Adventureland and Frontierland, or a rose-tinted look at the future, and the whole Jetsons
Efteling
flying
keeps it
cars
pretty
and
real.
stuff. Efteling,
And again,
Yeah.
the not only basically the whole park is a expanded fairy tale forest, as in it is a forest, because there is this one road where you go from Fata Morgana to Joris and the Draak. It's just a road. There's nothing there except you almost think you're in a local park or somewhere with a lot of trees, and you can just walk around, and yes, you see Baron, of course, almost dropping down. You hear the screams from the rapid river, but I like how you can just walk there, take a breath, and then go back into the action.
My favorite midway.
When you walk from Vogelrok back to Python.
Yes, that's
like
my
that
favorite.
walkway, like we have the water with the gondolas, whatever you call those things, and then the little car ride,
And Half Moon.
and you see, the
little
pagoda,
train ride
like,
and the
flying
flying
over the
pagoda.
park.
Yeah.
It is just different.
That might be my favorite,
so
single
relaxing.
favorite. Here's a category for next year: best single midway of any park. the
Not
midway,
Python,
the,
actual midway.
the midway segment from Python to Vogelrok is
I
like
don't
my
know why I have
favorite
such a
segment
hard
of
time
midway.
describing Efteling. It's just like, I guess once you know, you know. And I feel like everyone that's been there,
Yeah, if you go,
on
you
paper,
know.
they're like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not going to Efteling. I'm going to Walibi Hall. And I'm like, I'm going to stop you there right now. Like, you are going to go and drop your idea of credits, and you're just going to walk into Efteling, and you're going to just be transformed. You know,
Yeah.
It's
But you
just
need to be open for it, though, because I do
Yeah.
feel that, like, the Fairy Tale Forest, I don't know how you experience it, Alex, but I think it helps if you understand the stories that are
For
told.
me, my first visit to Efteling, I was just open arms, enjoying such a sophisticated approach to something that's fantasy, because you don't get sophistication and fantasy at the same time in America.
Mm-hmm.
Fantasy in America, I mean, no knocks on Disney or anything, but fantasy stuff in America is usually a bit more zany and animated. A little bit more garish, even.
definitely not as rustic and naturalistic.
But
as
it's
it is
not.
there.
There's not. The idea of something being fanciful and also being gorgeous is not really an American concept. So being at Efteling kind of feels like everything that's great about being in a European theme park. Everything that you want from a theme park experience that you can't get in America is encapsulated in the Efteling. Some of the fairy tales made sense to me. I mean, like the Emperor's New Clothes and stuff. Like some of those are
That's
classic.
one thing that Efteling, as
Hansel
they
and
grow as
Gretel.
an international destination, struggles with a bit. And even from coming in as living in the U.S. now and coming back with you, I can understand those stories because they're all told in Dutch, right? And you have Via Volta, they tell that story
Yeah.
in Dutch, and it's a really intricate story. Like, you really have to kind of know what's going on, and it's the pre-show takes forever. And then even with they have English subtitles, I know, for Baron, which is useful, but even that's a very intricate Dutch story, and that happens a lot. And then we went to the Fairy Tale Forest last time, and every single story that we watched, it was all in Dutch, and I was like, okay, so this is the one problem with Efteling being so deeply rooted in Dutch
Culture.
folklore and like fairy tale folklore, that like international travelers are gonna not understand half the stories that are literally being vocalized
by
to
the
you.
Dutch for the Dutch. They have to realize that it's actually an international destination. I mean,
Which it wasn't, and now it is.
When Kylie Jenner is like gassing it up
Yeah,
on
Kylie Jenner, I
Instagram,
love that
talking
part.
about how it's better than Disneyland, then like the world's gonna take notice, and people who don't speak Dutch are gonna go and want to.
But at the same
feel
time,
every bit of
we
that
go
place.
to Shanghai Disney, and everything
Yes,
is in
everything is in Mandarin,
and it's
and we
mystical, and
prefer
we
it
love
that way.
that. And I think that kind of works the same. Like, when you go to Efteling as a person who doesn't speak
Yeah.
Dutch, I'm sure it all sounds very
The
mystical.
Dutch dialogue for the audio animatronics. I mean, the first time I went, obviously I didn't have a guide. I didn't have a Dutch guide. I got a great satisfaction out of hearing the dialogue in Dutch from these audio animatronics and thinking, like, I wonder what they're saying. Like, you can gather it based on context, but like, it's not so hard to tell a story without words. Dreamflight does that beautifully.
Oh, Dreamflight was their first international attraction. It was to fight Disneyland Paris, and they
Yeah.
were like, we're going to have to also draw on people from other countries.
Yeah.
And I think that is the best example in the world of a dark ride that just tells its own story, and it's its own thing, and it doesn't require a single vocalization. There's not a
Storytelling
single
without
word on
words.
that ride. It's all just visual.
It's pure magic.
Amazing.
And I think Dreamflight is like everything that's great about Efteling lives in Dreamflight because it is a feeling.
It is a feeling.
What you
It is an
feel
atmosphere.
to exist in the
Great point.
atmospheric
Yeah.
component of Dreamflight without having to be spoon-fed or told or explained what's happening. You just go and you just wallow in it. You marinate and bask in the feeling, in the mood of that ride, and that's Efteling in a nutshell, right there.
I couldn't
That's
say
why
anything better.
it's best park atmosphere
I'm
without
glad
a shadow
that
of
you
a doubt
as
in
an
my mind.
American said that, so at least I know that us Dutch speakers on that podcast.
Do you
Oh,
know? Do you know what
Okay,
they are
that's fine.
getting next year?
What are they getting next year, son?
They are getting a playground, but called Nest.
Nest.
And yeah, and the
that
playground
sounds
will
good.
be centered around that it's very accessible for all types of children.
Oh, okay. I love that.
I was going to say,
And-
isn't Nest the Transformers headquarters?
Yes, it is.
That was the first thing I thought.
And next
I'm
to that,
wait.
I also saw, I think
Like-
it was announced recently that they're getting a bakery next to Max and Moritz, the coaster.
Oh, nice.
So
that makes
not
that makes
big
a lot of sense.
additions for
I hope they
Efteling
have
next
cookies
year.
in the shape of fart cushions.
I'm sure they would.
I want a Max and Moritz fart cookie. I've decided.
But 2021 looks to be a promising year period, especially for other attractions
Mm-hmm.
around the world. There are some really big coasters coming. I mean, just south of the border of Efteling, just a few moments away. What do we got going on in Belgium?
Yeah, well,
What don't
so
we got going on in
obviously,
I think we all know.
like all
Like-
of it.
Like what possessed them to
all
build
of the
this crazy
goings
shit?
on.
like 2021 obviously will have a lot of coasters that were postponed from 2020, but there is also those that were really planned for 2021. And yeah,
a big
for
year
me in
because of
Europe,
that overflow.
it's finally the year of Belgium. Because we had, obviously Fury was a great addition that we got, but this is, you see in the Netherlands them getting the RMC, the two B&Ms, and Belgium was still there with the smaller coasters. Next year,
Belgium
I
doesn't have a B&M yet.
say that again.
No, they don't.
Belgium doesn't have a B&M yet. I was
No,
wondering.
no.
I wonder which park will
And
do that first.
I'm wondering if it will ever get one. There was once a rumor that Plopsaland would get a B&M same style as Hollywood Dream. In,
yes.
Tokyo Disneyland.
I need
Yeah.
B&M family coasters in all of these parks.
But yeah, that is something. They have a trend of copying a lot of rides to all the parks. That is something they can do. But no, they chose to go for something unique. And,
And
we
very thrilling and terrifying.
Yeah, and I went there last weekend.
Your
so
pictures
that
were
was
awesome,
beginning
by
of
the way.
December, where I took some pictures of the construction going on, and already from the highway you could see it, and that was the kind of excitement like a little child has before going to a park, even though it's not open. That was exactly what happened, and it looks so weird seeing it there, like.
Yeah, I was saying, like, the biggest coaster they have right now is Anubis, and then they're building this crazy big mech coaster. It's going to stick out. Like,
I forgot
Well,
that Anubis existed, so I was imagining this park being all kiddie coasters, and then the Max Spinner, Extreme Spinner with the launches and loops and stuff. I'm like, wow, that's quite a jump. But then I remembered that they have a launched Eurofighter, which is a nice step in between.
But honestly, I don't think Time Traveler will be a lot higher than Anubis, though. So
Oh, 'cause it has that
they
top hat.
kind of. My final picture was them on the same picture, and they compete
Yeah.
quite nicely.
I guess that's true, because Anubis has like that classic top hat shape, which opens
Yeah,
the
and
door.
I
It's
love
like,
that top hat.
The next
Yeah.
coaster has a top hat that's like this weird shaped quarter turn
Yeah,
top
just weird
hat.
turn thing,
That's
yeah.
like so fun. It's an opportunity to do something really different since they already had a launch coaster with a normal top hat. Let's do something totally crazy.
Yeah,
That's going to be one of the best coasters.
like
in
if
the
I
world
look
when it
at
opens.
RCDB, Anubis is stated as 34 meters, and the new spinning is
That's
stated
pretty
as
high.
33 meters. So Anubis would actually be higher.
is actually taller.
Yeah, but that top
wow.
hat is amazing. But so,
Yeah.
obviously there's the extreme spinning coaster, and it has its unique elements. It's the first of its type in Europe. So really a good job for Plopsaland for choosing
I
that
really
one.
didn't think I would care for Time Traveler at Silver Dollar City, and then we wrote it, and I'm like, actually, this is incredible. And in a way, it makes other launch coasters seem inadequate, the way that it does what it does, and puts your body through a lot more than what I thought you could comfortably handle. Like, I didn't think that launching sideways and going through some of these forces facing whichever way you happen to be I never imagined it being so fun and pleasant and enjoyable, but you just want to ride it over and over again and see how many
Exactly.
ways you can feel.
Yeah.
You want to see how many ways you can feel these forces. You want to be facing all directions every time you do that top hat or the loop or the launch or the barrel roll. The rewritability is infinite.
But obviously, the reason why they build it is because a bit further down near Brussels, Wallaby decided to put like this intimate mega coaster.
Wallaby, Belgium, showing up to the hypercoaster party fashionably late, but taking all of the attention.
Very fashionably.
Yeah, because when Six Flags took over, it was Wallaby Holland that got the Goliath and the Intamin.
Yeah.
The roller coaster capital of Europe. Remember those?
Six Flags
Oh,
Holland.
yeah.
So aggressive.
But now it's the other way around. Now it's Belgium that's getting to grow, and the original Wallaby on top of that. That finally gets its
flagship
eye-catcher
Wallaby.
coaster.
They finally decided they had enough like kiddie coasters and stuff, and they're like, okay.
Well, their focus is definitely family. Well, the problem with the Netherlands, with Wallaby Holland's always been that Cigarettes came in and didn't realize for some magically stupid reason, because they really suck at demographic research, that
To this day, that hasn't changed.
that people don't have cars necessarily in Netherlands, and so they couldn't staff the park properly, and then people just can't get to the park easily if they don't have a car. You have to take like a bus from Harderwijk, and it just takes too much time. Like it's not really worth it.
That was never an issue for Wallaby Belgium because it has its own train station.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep, there you go.
So
And
it's getting that flow.
investments.
It's also very close to the highway, so also by car it's easy to reach. But yeah, so it will be interesting to see those two compete with each other and see what people will find the best of the two. So I really, really hope that you guys can come over
That's
and
going
that
to be
I
like
can
an
show you
impossible
around.
choice. I
Yeah,
bet
it'll be so
we'll go
much
to.
fun to
It'll
do
be
all
our
the
first time
Belgian
riding
parks.
coasters in Belgium, and we'll leave with like 2 new coasters in our top 10 still. Without a
Let's
shadow of
hope
a
so.
doubt in my
Let's
mind.
hope so.
Based on, I can
mean,
only
even-
assume that they'll be spectacular in best case scenario based on the stuff that we've already ridden.
I mean, you're saying top 10
Hopes are
stuff,
high.
even on the home front. I mean, we're lucky to live in Central Florida, where we're seeing our own coaster boom within the same kind of space. We have Velocicoaster opening next year, which we just released testing footage of it, so go to check it out on thecoasterkings.com. But we also have Icebreaker, which I'm personally meh about, but I think a lot of people.
In any case,
are
I mean, we're
excited.
seeing a Central Florida coaster arms race, the likes of which we've not seen since the late 90s when
Yeah.
Islands of Adventure opened. And that was a whole new park. We're not even getting we don't have a new gate in Florida, but you
We
would
just have
never
every
know
gate
based on the
adding-
influx of coasters. We're
It's
getting
kinda
like 7
postponed.
e-ticket coasters.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah, it's coming. But that'll be its own. When Epic Universe does decide to grace us with its presence, that'll be its own seismic shift in the Central Florida market with its
See,
the first
for-
totally new
for a
collection of
minute,
coasters in
the industry
a long
has
time.
really waved back and forth a lot, and for a moment we were really like on the dark ride train, like everything needs to be a cool experience, and we have now swung back over to the side
the pendulum has swung back to coasters.
Yeah.
a hot thing.
You know
like,
what?
you want to have coasters.
Sean and Alex decided to go and live in Florida, and guess
Florida.
what? Guess what
I
happened?
guess, yeah. Well, actually,
became Coaster
Disney
King
announced Tron, and we moved. We're like, okay, it's time to move to Florida. 'cause they're
Look what happened.
building Tron.
COVID.
Yeah,
Oh.
so
And then COVID
although
happened.
Tron is probably 22, right?
Yeah, we're starting to
Well,
hear
we're
like
not
mixed
sure.
ideas because Tron was always planned for fall, so they have a little more
I think
time
they
to
still
catch
want to
up.
have it. I think I wouldn't be shocked if
So I
they
think it
were
depends on what they're going to end up doing with their capacity. If they're going to be able to have enough people like attend like the rush the first couple of months, then I think they're going to try and open it as early as possible.
I think they might still try to get it open on October 1st, 2021. That is
Well,
the 50th anniversary.
I think the priority is still for Cosmic Rewind, though, because Epcot needs
Actually,
it more.
I think Epcot's anniversary is until
Epcot's own 40th
22,
anniversary is the following year.
so they could because they're opening in 21. They already confirmed
They're
they're
getting
opening
Ratatouille.
so they could push Rewind
Till October 1st,
so-
2022.
Yeah,
or just
but-
sometime
or something
2022
for
as
the-
an anniversary gift
For the Epcot anniversary.
Well,
40th
I've listened
anniversary.
to the Disney Dish, and they think they are putting all their horses on Cosmic Rewind because apparently
I mean, I
they
don't
are
blame
filming Thor, the new Thor movie in Australia at the moment, and it includes a lot of the actors of Guardians of the Galaxy. So what they'll try to do is, as they are in costume there, is to film the footage for the Cosmic Rewind coaster as well, so that
Oh,
it's
that's
ready
really
to
cool.
open the coaster.
Good for
So
them.
that's what
Well,
I heard
and-
there. So
and Guardians of the Galaxy track work is complete, and with Tron's
Yeah,
track
they're
work is
further
complete.
ahead.
But the
Exactly.
trains are on site, and so they are already ready to
Because
start
Guardians
testing
was
if
supposed
needed.
to
It's
open
testing.
6 months before Tron.
Yeah, so there's always that. But I mean, from like a marketability standpoint, given that Epcot already has a new ride opening in 21 confirmed, and it's not their anniversary in 21 as it is Magic Kingdom's anniversary, I can imagine Disney putting all their own working and labor capacity on the Tron project.
And you can only do so much to get more people to go to Epcot. I mean, everyone already goes.
Well, it makes more sense to me to do 2 rides over the course of 2 years, including your biggest ride in the history of the park.
Because
anniversary.
Ratatouille was supposed to already be open and be like a 2019 attraction, so it was going to Ratatouille. I thought it was.
It's 2020.
It was supposed to open in March, and then Guardians was supposed to open like 12 months later. So I would just as soon assume that like that 12-month gap between Ratatouille and Guardians will remain intact, and just will be dictated by whenever Ratatouille opens.
But yeah, overall, there's just a lot of excitement.
That's just my
And then
next
there's
year.
yeah, so that was Orlando, and then there's Tampa with Iron Gwazi's too as well.
Iron Gwazi.
And all the other SeaWorld parks like Pantheon and Emperor.
It's the first time that all 5 marquee SeaWorld parks built a coaster the same year.
Yeah, well, I guess
pretty
only one
uncanny.
actually
What a
opened,
year.
But yeah.
Yeah. But they did build them this
But
year.
they sure did build all of them this year. So yeah, great,
And then-
exciting.
Yeah, and
New
to round
parks.
up Europe from my side, I think another one that was planned for 21 was Monster at Gronelund. And it's been 4 years almost since we had a new B&M coaster. So I'm kind of excited for that because
can't wait to see
B&M
the trains on
has
that.
gotten a bit in the shadow of RMC the last few years, but it's still...
And Intamin.
And Intamin, yes.
Yeah.
But it's still real...
Like, do we know what the trains look like for Monster? Because I have this
No.
weird suspicion that the trains are going to look a lot different than what we've already seen.
I think they're going to be just the old school forest side just because it's...
Because a lot of people
less wide
saying
envelope.
because of the clearances, it'll be like, traditional. But they haven't done trains like that since Osiris.
Yeah, but
It would
it's
be
never
nice
too
to
late.
see, but I also wouldn't be surprised if they did a configuration more like the family inverts, where it's 2 across. Like if they did trains just like the family invert
I just
at
think that
Shanghai Happy Valley.
The turns and inversions are too tight, and then the trains would be too long. That's always been a problem with the SLCs. I don't think B&M will make that mistake with having really long trains on small elements.
Yeah.
So I think I would.
But then we also don't know what kind of capacity they're going to try to squeeze out of this ride. I mean, Gronelund doesn't have that high of attendance. I wouldn't, if this ride had the same capacity as the invert at Trip Stroll, I wouldn't be shocked, or even less. If it was like a 16 passenger train for this invert, that's perfectly adequate capacity for a park that has an Intamin, Zaxbin, and a Wild Mouse is some of their like marquee coasters, or a family invert that only has 1 train.
In my head, I just always associate the cost of investment with the capacity.
Yeah.
I'm like, if you're going to spend that much money on such a crazy ride, you also want it to have good capacity.
And then there's Vekoma, which is like,
Yeah.
we'll build you a $30 million motorcycle coaster that has 14 people per dispatch.
For real.
Enjoy!
But speaking of Vekoma, that's the 4th one that I wanted to point out is Energylandia with Abyssus. And
And
the
then just
second...
another energy
Is it
level.
pronounced
Family Boomerang?
Abyssus or Abyssus?
I don't know.
I thought, because
We'll see.
Abyssus reminds me of like the mathematician little slidey rule thing, an abacus.
Oh, yeah. I know
That'd
what
be
you
kind
mean.
of a fun theme for a ride.
But so, so you have that one, you have the Family Boomerang, you have the Mine Train. Apparently, they started on the construction of that one too. So,
and there's a
but-
lot of people saying people have been hearing from employees of the park that that the tilt coaster is still happening. I even heard someone say that a ride operator told them that they have parts on site for
I
a
mean, at
tilt
this point, I
coaster.
wouldn't even be surprised.
Oh yeah, you couldn't. Nothing that park does will ever surprise me at this point. Certainly, with their love affair with Vekoma, I expect them to have just ordered the entire catalog. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe in a couple years,
I mean,
they'll have
yeah,
another flying
they
coaster.
literally have like 3 family coasters, like the kiddie coaster product line, whatever the old roller skater used to be. They have like 3 of those.
This is
Like, who
already
needs
one
that
of the
many
only
them?
parks in the world that has like a next generation Vekoma launch coaster, and now they're building a bigger one.
Yeah, the park has like all the stuff.
And
but
then-
yeah, so sorry. Go
yeah,
ahead,
sorry. No, and to highlight also something in Asia, I think there is, of course, this Super Nintendo World that will
Yes.
be so cool.
Yeah.
So cool.
I can't wait to hear and understand the details of the Mario Kart ride, because I have very high hopes.
I'm just excited that they're just far along already in Hollywood, and so that we can see it within the next couple of years in Hollywood as well. It's going to be really cool having that in the U.S. And I think it's going to help with not overcrowding the Japan park, which is already pretty crowded to begin with. And with that, we're going to end this last episode of the season 2, 2020, the Coaster Kings radio podcast series. We're going to launch season 3 really soon already. Season 3 is going to have shorter episodes,
we
promise you guys.
already have collabs that are in the works for season 3.
We also have a bit of a new structure we're going to try out.
People.
To make sure everyone feels like they can listen to our podcast and not
not fall asleep.
Fall asleep or have just like too long episodes. Like we get it, guys. We're sorry. We just kind of start talking and we just never end.
I don't know. I don't mind listening to a 2-hour podcast,
but I will say that it doesn't really necessarily apply to everyone.
Okay.
But yeah, so before I say the official goodbye with a wave of a hand, I'm going to plug a couple things like I usually do. So today we're going to plug our new Velocicoaster and Time Traveler updates. So go to thecoasterkings.com. I know this comes out a couple days late, but still go back and check it out. These are awesome articles, updates, testing footage, construction. And then, of course, we have a whole 2 seasons of Coaster Kings Radio with awesome collaborations, really great topics. So make sure you check out some of our past episodes if you're new. And if you want to read into the Crystal Crown Awards in further detail, we have the full ranking online as the same date as this podcast launches.
Yeah, if you're like gonna start telling your friends like Coaster Kings ranked this park as the best, blah blah blah, and like I can't believe their logic, you'll have a paper version with little graphs about our explanation. You don't have to make them listen to the whole podcast, although we wouldn't mind. But you don't have to make people listen to the podcast for you to explain vicariously through us how we came to some of these conclusions for our awards, because they will be written down in a nice little article.
And you also don't have to be swag. If you want to be swag, we have a merch line as well, so you can be like.
Purchase swag.
You can purchase swag. If you want to look swaggy, swagger.
Have swag by purchasing swag.
You don't have to have swag, but if you want to have swag, we got swag.
Yeah, I feel like swag is a noun, not like it's something that you. Or no, I guess it's an adjective. Swag is an adjective, not a noun.
Okay, so the whole point is you can be or have swag to your disposal on the coasterkings.com/shop.
They know we got swagger.
And you can buy a bunch of cool merch that a lot of our stuff will disappear at the end of this year. So
Mick Jagger.
Shop till you drop.
In the US or in Europe, because also the European site is live too, so that you don't have to pay import fees or anything.
Yep.
And
you don't have to wait a month for your stuff to
Sorry,
show.
Timo.
Yeah. Shout out to Timo.
We should dedicate the European shop to Timo, because it wouldn't exist without him.
A little Timo head in the header.
A little Timo.
Timo head.
We love you, Timo.
Timo, you better listen to this episode.
Yeah.
Okay, and with that, we're going to end the year.
We're ending the year. Y'all have a good one. We'll see you in 2021.
Yeah.
Good luck.
I mean, it can only go up from here, right?
Right.
It can't go
Couldn't possibly
get any worse. I'm scared.
Yeah.
I'm
assuming
even excited for 21 anymore.
The American transition of power goes accordingly.
Here in Belgium, it's a bubble celebration. So at Christmas, it's only our own families that will be here. So we're very limited. But I really hope that 2021 can bring you all the joy and all the new theme park rides and all the old theme park rides back into your life in a more normal state.
Yeah.
From best pavement to most vintage.
Yeah.
2021 hopefully has it all for you, for me.
Dry looping.
And that.
Stay healthy, guys.
Stay incredibly healthy. Get the vaccine if you feel like getting it.
And
wear the mask.
Vaccine, even if you don't feel like getting it.
Wear the mask.
Wear the mask.
And if you launch fireworks this year, don't burn off your hand. This applies most to Dutch people. And
no, they can't. They're not allowed.
No
fireworks. They were pretty rough.
Americans are much more in danger, I think. Of
This is literally the most chaotic ending of any episode ever. I'm just gonna say bye.
That's just a summary of season 2.
Yeah, this is literally season 2 in 2 minutes. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Bye.